Just one.
Matt, were you going to say something off the record? Little late, Playboy.
Now we're good, man. I'm
I
ready to rock.
think.
Ready to roll.
Okay. Hopefully, that's the edited version.
Yeah.
Let's go with it. All right. It's that time of the year again. Holy freaking moly. This is nine of these now, maybe eight. I think the first year I started King of Lists in 2016, but I think the first year I didn't do a preview show for Worlds. So maybe I did. Who knows? We're getting close to a decade of freaking doing these, but it is that time of year, gentlemen. IPF Worlds has rolled around. We're going to do the men's episode right now, division by division, like we always do. Starting in the 59 kilo class, work our way up to the large gentleman. Six pack Lapadat. We got the boys back. Matt Gary, Eric Helms, Rory Lynch. We got a good spread. So let's start in the 59 kilo class. We have, let me see who was allocated the 59s. That is none other than Sir Rory is leading the charge here. Rory, I won't dive too deep into your storylines. I got a podcast with Kasim Sand. I can add some notes if you haven't heard it, but take it off, sir. What are we looking at with the 59 kilo class?
I am actually really excited for the 59 kilo class this year, and there's a couple of reasons why, and I'll tell you. But first, I want to note that one of the favorites, Oscar Carpio, has pulled out. So he would have been in contention for at least a podium spot. I would have said in contention for first or second, but he had I believe it was a back injury about 2 weeks ago and has withdrawn. So unfortunately, no Oscar for this Worlds, but hopefully we'll see him sort of back and healthy at a future event. So, am I going first downwards, or I'm starting like at third or something and working up to the most exciting bit? I think that's the better way to do it, isn't it? So, one of the reasons that I'm really excited for this class is I actually think that there's going to be about a 3, maybe 4-way fight for third place, and I think that that's going to be really exciting. I've said it a couple of times before, but I really like powerlifting where we get to see people go head to head and showcase not only their strength, which, obviously key part of powerlifting, but also showcase their like ability to perform as powerlifters. And I think that that's exciting. And we don't always get that, particularly in the more like extreme weight classes, like the 59 kilo men. So in, I think, contention for third, I have the Japanese lifter Kyosuke Yoshioka. I'm sure I've got that wrong. Brian Seong from Canada, and Ivan Campano Diaz from Spain. Those are the three that I have in sort of roughly third to fifth in no particular order. One thing that I would like to point out there is that Brian Seong has PR'd his total every single meet. Like it's like 6 or 7 meets in a row now. He's improved his total. And it's like it's going up in reasonable jumps as well. So his PR total is 592 and a half. But his training is looking really good. And he has this track record of just continuing to improve like meet over meet. Which some of the other lifters just don't have, right? Some of the other lifters have been at around the same total, sort of stalled out there for a while. Ivan looking really, really strong, actually. He did 602 and a half just a couple of weeks ago in training. He was a little bit, sorry, I'm going to correct that. He was actually very heavy for that. He was about 64.3 kilograms, which is at 59, like dropping 5 kilos is like substantial. However, before Euros, which was only in March, he hit 600 at 64.1 and then went on to total 607.5. So I think he's about the same body weight. He hit about the same training total, about the same duration out. So I'm looking at this and thinking, look, he's probably good for something around about that 607, maybe 610 mark again. And so that's about where I'm putting him. And so that's about what I think these men are going to need to land on the podium here, sort of something between sort of 605 and 615. Um, Not exactly safe in second, but I think the my favorites come in second at least. Antoine Garcia from France. His best total is 610, but his training has been looking outstanding recently. He doesn't actually post a lot, but he has put a done a 10 kilo squat PB in training, and I think it's about a 5 kilo bench PB in training. I think I saw a 230.5 squat. His best squat in competition is 223. And a 140.5 bench press as well. His best bench press in competition is 135.5, I believe. So he's looking quite good. I don't know if those are going to translate directly into sort of 15 kilos more on his total. That would be a pretty big ask, especially at the lighter weight classes. And I don't know what's going on with his body weight. But I would be picking Antoine to be, probably coming in second place here. Mm. And then my pick for first is actually reasonably comfortably Kasimsan Senyumong or Opal. He's done 715 at a higher body weight. He was in the 66 kilo class when he did that. He did a 680 gym total sort of about a little bit more than 2 weeks ago. He is heavy, but not as heavy as some of these men. Like I'm not getting week by week updates on his body weight or anything, but last I saw he was floating around about 61, which is, that is a not exactly comfortable cut, but that's reasonably close to the 59 kilo class. And I do know that he's working specifically with someone on that as well. So, I think really good day. Kasim Sand goes high 600s and probably has the squat, deadlift, and total records at the end of the day. And that would be pretty impressive. I do think that the bench record is probably out of reach for all of these men for a few years still, though.
Let me ask this. This record by Fedoshenko has lasted for far too long. IPF Worlds, we're going to swing around the table. Does the world record fall at IPF Worlds? Start with you, Matt.
No.
Eric?
No, I think he's going to save it.
Rory?
Also no. So the record is 669.5. You need 670 to break it, and that is a really big ask. Even Opal, who has gone about 40 kilos over that, would need to have hung on to quite a lot of strength. But then there is also the sort of tactical consideration that even if you are capable of breaking the record, you make a lot more money by not doing it and then breaking it at Sheffield. So I would say that either he is going to fall a little bit short, given the weight cut is going to hurt him, or he's going to have already won without needing to break the record, and he's going to save it for Sheffield and make money off breaking it instead.
Let me do a follow-up real quick then. Clear something up. His goal is to break the world record at IPF Worlds just by 0.5 because he believes he'll have plenty more in the tank for Sheffield. So if that is his goal, in consideration where he's not holding back, he's looking to break the total world record by 0.5. Now it's a question of not whether he's going to hold back, but whether you think he can. Let me swing around the table one more time now that the table has been reset. Matt Gary?
So you're asking if we think he can.
Now
correct?
it's an if you think he can at Worlds.
I'm still going to go with no. No, I think those last couple of kilos of body weight are going to make a significant difference.
Eric?
Yeah, I listened to his podcast and I did hear him specifically state that's the plan, but I think there's a difference between what you say on a podcast and then what happens on the day in consultation with your pit crew. And correct me if I'm wrong, he's working with RTS, is that right?
Yes, yep. Mike T's his coach.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So he's going to have some like it's definitely not like a top down hierarchical, you must do this approach to coaching by any means coming out of the team auto regulation. But I think at the same time, I do think that record is probably going to be pretty close to his top end. IPF Worlds is a place where, or just Worlds or Nationals or anything like this, is generally you're not trying to hit a home run, you're trying to win and establish a win. Now, this is a little unique because he's probably 50 kilos ahead of the next best person, uh, potentially. So, and there's a cut, and there's Sheffield. So I think confidence on a podcast or athlete on their own talking is going to be a little different when you have time to think, mull it over, discuss things, and you're like, there's not even necessarily a guarantee that we get, the 0.5 kilo break. So let's see where we're at and take what we need to do and solidify a really competitive total. You know, I think there could also be some consideration as to, are we in contention for best lifter? It'll be very hard to tell because they're 59 early up. They might want to see how far they can knock that ball down the court and see if other people can chase it. But there's a few things to consider, and I think the biggest one is that you don't need to. And I think there is potential money on the line that will be easier and just not to go for it. And I think cooler heads will probably prevail. I don't think we're going to see him wave off a ninth attempt deadlift, but I do think he probably will leave a little left.
Hey, put it this way: you make great points. But I'm going to reset the table once again. Let's say, let me ask you point blank, because I got a follow-up question that this will make more sense in a second. But do you think it's there? If he wants 670, you make great points, but do you think it's there 670 on the day by June?
Look, Opor is like clearly very strong.
Hey,
right?
let Eric 1 sec. Sorry, Eric, I'm going to get to you next. I just want Eric to I'm putting Eric on the spot. You're next, Playboy. Don't worry. Eric.
So this is an interesting one. So we all remember the conversation with some other person who may or may not be in this room regarding what Chell would have after a cut.
Well, here we
But
go.
I don't remember who it was with.
Yeah.
All I remember is that I ended up being right. And that's for this narcissist, that's all that matters. So I don't need other people to lose. I just need to win all the time, at least in my own mind.
Fair.
Okay, but in all seriousness, I had more information about Shell. He was sharing a lot more. I knew personally his nutritionist, the approach, and he was dropping a fair amount of weight and getting very, very lean. Kasim Sand is someone who, if you listen to the podcast or if you didn't, I'll give all the listeners a brief preview. He was not maxed out at his weight class. And you could argue that he is maybe better built to be a 59 than a 66, rather than a 66 who's like, how much blood can I squeeze out of the stone kind of deal. Like we mentioned, Ivan Campano is cutting down from 64 and has historically done that and been able to preserve a decent amount of performance on the day. Surprisingly, cutting 5 kilos. So we're talking about someone who's probably going to be cutting 2 kilos, which is not nothing at 59, but it's still a very normal gut cut plus a mild water restriction away. Now he's not training in the same kind of fed state, so I think it'll be right at the top end of what's projected. I think I would not be surprised if he could attempt a shot on the world record, and it would be a challenge. I don't think he should, I guess is what I would say.
Yeah. Fair. So you think you wouldn't be surprised if it's there, but you don't think it's probably a good idea, and that's fair. Rory,
correct.
What have you on this? Do you think the world record is there for him? Let's assume he wants it.
It would have to be a pretty good day. Like I think, like I'm generally projecting these men with a range of what I think they're capable of, like rather than picking individual numbers. And so like I went back just now and tried to like what's the most realistic way for him to hit 670, right? And it's probably something like 250, 150, 270. But that would mean that he needs to hang on to a lot of squat strength, squat something pretty heavy. That's 10 kilos over the squat world record. Hang on to a lot of bench strength, which for many people is the lift that takes the biggest hit when you drop a weight class. And Opal misses a lot of deadlifts in competition. Like he misses at Sheffield, he missed both his opener and his third attempt deadlift. At IPF Worlds last year, he missed his opening deadlift. The meet before that, which was Asian Championships, he missed his third attempt. I don't think I know, looking back at his results, the last time he went 3 for 3 on deadlifts was 2020. Like, I don't doubt that he has the strength, but having the strength and being able to put it together on the day at the body weight under the conditions it's a big ask, and it's his first time hitting 59. Like, I just don't. I would guess that it's probably not going to be there.
Okay,
I would also just add that, like, and big shout out to Matt Gary for supplying this data for us. Low hit rate is a bit of an epidemic in this class. You got, you've got, for the lifters we have data on, they're typically closer to almost getting 7 on average, being closer in some cases to like 6.5. So some of that is just, and you get to the end of the 2 weight classes, the super heavies have issues with, hitting depth and what that looks like, and it's kind of body shape and things like that. And the absolute loads are moving them around a bit. And at the very, very end, we've got people cutting 5 kilos, which I know that doesn't sound like much if you're thinking, oh, I'm a 120, but that is almost 10% of their body weight, So there is unpredictable performance in the lightest weight class because people are doing things to make weight, because there's just not many people who naturally walk around at 59 kilos. So I think it's just, we need to be aware that this is a highly variable class based upon people's ability to perform on the day, and people end up being in a position on their third deadlift where they're having to pull something big just to kind of get back into where they wish they had been if they hadn't missed something else, to Rory's point.
How about, so this leads me to my next follow-up question, roundtable, same situation. We'll start with Matt. We all think that he's the favorite, so that means he'll be going to Sheffield. Come Sheffield, is he the first 59 to total 700 kilos?
By Sheffield, I think he certainly got a shot, but that's a big jump from whatever he's going to hit at Worlds to 700. That's a significant percentage of increase. So
you'll have more data points by the time Sheffield rolls around. We do that preview show. You'll have more data points. You're allowed to change, but the fun of it is not having data points and just shooting well.
Yeah, for right now, I'm going to say no, and I guess for the same reasons that I thought that Chell wouldn't hit the 800 at the 74. Just it's this super quantum leap, if you will. So for right now, I'll say no. After this championships and Sheffield preview, we can revisit the conversation. You're
still right with Shell so far as well. We'll have to see what Shell ends up doing, but we'll see. Eric?
I don't think he's going to go over 700. I mean, he doesn't. It's hard. Like, he needs a good day to do that in the 66s. So, I mean, he's capable, but capable and consistent are 2 very different things. So I would suspect that he does break the world record and does something in the 680 to 695 range. But I think he's going to struggle to get over 700.
Yeah, those big milestones. At least if nothing else, Shell and Kasim Sen are sparking that conversation, which is always exciting. And that's all half of it, is creating hype around your weight class, spark the conversation, especially the 59s. They need it. Rory, what say you?
I'm leaning towards no as well. Couple of reasons. One, that's just a huge improvement on anything that we've seen at that weight class before. We haven't even seen him get to that body weight yet. And he's got a demanding sort of 7 months between now and Sheffield, right? Like, he still has to win the world championships. Like, right? Like, there's a lot of stuff that can go wrong between now and whatever time his class finishes a week from today. He's signed up for World Games. I assume that he's going to do Asia's, and then he's going to come into Sheffield in January. That's a really big competitive year we we don't know what he's like. We don't know what he's capable of 59 yet. Like that best training total we've seen from him was 680, and that was heavy, still not particularly heavy, but that was still heavy. It was under training conditions, which makes things a little bit more favorable. I think putting 30 kilos on the world record total is just a really, really big ask.
And who knows? If he hits 700, all you guys are getting soundbited into a video. What's the beauty of what we do, huh? High risk, high reward, even when you're podcasting.
He
Even when you
deserves that.
podcast. That's right. All right. Any notes you guys want to make for the 59s, or shall we move into the 66s? And this big dev in the last podcast I did with the 120s with Gerrans is all part of the Austin Perkins effect. Austin Perkins, such a dominant force in powerlifting, the pound for pound king, that Shell drops to 66, another ripple, Kasim drops to 59. We got individuals moving back up to 83. I mean, obviously, this is like Eric Helms talking about, I'm such a narcissist that, I mean, if Perk wanted to be that guy, he could be like, I have changed powerlifting. I'm so dominant. But those are my words, not Perk's. So let's look at the 66s, though. Shell, and all joking aside, has really found he probably should have always been a 66. My goodness. So far ahead of the rest of the pack at this point. His performance at Sheffield and everything he's done there, but what can we expect at Worlds? Obviously, the discussion is, we know what the world record is. He'd be crazy to go beyond it, and we don't suspect the others are going to push him. But we got some battles, and I am very interested in Eric. I believe this is your weight class. What are your thoughts? Now, I also did some research on this to back you up here, my friend. But Avery Jackson has been posting a lot, but he's young, he's strong, shows a world of promise, still relatively young in his lifting years. Yeah, but he's not showing a lot. I'm wondering where you put him. We got Santos from Mexico, Sataki from Japan, and then there's Shell once again. What are you thinking, Eric? What are we looking at with the 66s?
So I think this is you mentioned how, he maybe always should have been a 66, and I think this is a great example where we're seeing the cost of the advancement of powerlifting. So there was and I'm going to turn this into at least 5 minutes of sports science. There's some demographic data that I was looking at a couple years back, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and there was a relatively clear relationship in weightlifting that people were pretty lean. And if you look as you get lighter in the weight classes in weightlifting, you tend to see leaner and leaner and leaner athletes, which makes sense. And that tends to be what you need to do to be competitive, is to maximize your lean body mass to weight ratio. And you're going to get some sport selection for the people who can do that and walk around. Just a naturally lower body fat intervention point, the point when your body starts to say, hey, I don't want to be this lean. So you're going to get more people competitive who have just the genetics and the lifestyle factors that enable them to walk around looking like they're 6 to 10 weeks out from a bodybuilding show in lightweight classes and weightlifting. But we weren't seeing that in powerlifting circa 2018, 2019. That's changing. And there are some people who can walk around and kind of just cut to their weight class, and they don't understand why everyone else is harder. And there's other people who have to be in a state of kind of being semi-dieted, low energy availability. And there's data on this in track athletes. If you look at top level women sprinters, for example, some of them are similar leanness to others, but maybe not quite there, but they're experiencing symptoms of low energy availability. They have irregular menstrual cycles, but they can still compete at that highest level with the folks who aren't, who are leaner. And that sounds weird. Why are these leaner women, slightly leaner women, not experiencing symptoms of low energy availability? It's because they're the naturally lean ones, and the other ones are just lean enough naturally that they can cut down to be competitive as a sprinter. Because in sprinting, you want to weigh as little as possible to propel yourself down the track. But if you are in a perpetual state of dieting all the time, you also have a higher risk of injury. You're also more prone to burnout, overtraining. And what I really do appreciate about Shell is he's being very candid in his interviews about what it's like to be a father. He's sharing things like doing weighted vest walks and his mentality and kind of the challenge of dieting. And he sounds to me like a bodybuilder, a competitive bodybuilder is in the final phases. And he's done a great job of holding on to strength. But the fact that he had to cut weight for Euros also sounds exactly like a bodybuilder to me, because that means once Sheffield was over, he had the celebratory meal that turned into a celebratory month, and didn't necessarily have the agency to control that. And that's a very normal biological response. I'm not faulting him for that. And I think it indicates to me that this is not the most sustainable weight class for him. And the unfortunate thing is that that rise in body weight didn't concomitantly come with an increase in his total back to his 74 numbers. So his total at Euros was obviously good enough to win the class. It's still elite and the best we've ever seen in the 66s, but it's not like, oh, as soon as he was able to get out of that state, the numbers came back. So he has been a little beat up by this cut, psychosocially, physically. And I think he will come in and he will win, and it'll be a better performance than at Worlds. But I'm not sure he's going to do better than he did at, say, Sheffield. And I think we're potentially close to where his ceiling might be, around what we saw at Sheffield, maybe another 10 kilos at 66. So that is what I think I'm seeing. I could be wrong. But that does tell us that Chell is probably not going to be just loving life and chilling at 66, like perhaps Kasim Sand will be able to do at 59, or when we talk about the women's preview show, some other people who've cut down. This is an ask for him, and it has turned him into a generational lifter now. He's got titles across equipped, unequipped, multiple weight classes, and he's probably going to win worlds here, and he's going to have a fantastic year. But I think he's a bit of a known quantity now, based upon that Euros performance. I could be wrong, like I said. So I think it's his to win. I think he's going to come away with it, but I think we're going to see something probably between Sheffield and Euros performance, which gives Avery Jackson a bit of a sitting target, but I don't think there's been enough time for Avery to chase that. It would take a really bad day or some flubs by Chell for anything besides, in my opinion, first and second place to be relatively fixed. And then after that, I think it gets interesting with a battle for the third place in the podium. I couldn't find hardly any information about Santos Jimenez from Mexico. And the information I did find on Satake Yusuke, and like Rory, I'm probably also slaughtering that name, so apologies to Asia. But his numbers out of Japan, the Japanese lifter in the 66s, are actually a little better than they look. One of the, I think Japanese nationals is not an open powerlifting yet, and he actually did squat a national record that would have been, I think, a 5.5 kilo PR for him. So he was doing some pretty good opener speed lifts around 235, 150, 240 about a week ago. And kind of looking at his historical posting, that seems to be on track for him being close to around his personal bests, maybe, improving his total. So I think we're probably going to see, so long as he has a good day and really kind of the unknown of the lifter from Mexico, I think we'll probably see a podium that is Chell, Avery, and then Satake. And after that, it'll be a bit of a dogfight with a lot of the other lifters from Canada, Australia, France, and in Mexico to see where that top five kind of shakes out. But that's, I think, the big story, in my opinion, or the big question mark is Chell has the opportunity to show us, no, I was actually holding back and just kind of in recovery mode for Euros, or yeah, I had to really control my nutrition. It's been challenging, and I didn't have to cut as much, and I could do a little bit better. But this has been a challenging process, keeping myself close enough to within striking distance of 66 and being able to train and recover.
Yeah, so I got a couple of follow-up questions for you gentlemen. We're going to swing around the table on this. I'll just add real quick before we do. Satake is bounced back and forth, kind of like Shell, between equipped, non-equipped. He's been to World Games. On the equipped side, he's a grizzled veteran. won in
Oh, can I
World
say
Games,
one last
etc.
thing, Ryan? Sorry.
Go ahead.
Um,
Go ahead.
just so I don't want people to think I'm purely basing this on the Euros performance. About a week ago, Chell did a 740 total at 70. So I just want to point that out that he's still hanging out at the highest you'd probably want to cut from reasonably to get to his class. Kind of, he's not sitting as close as maybe he would have liked to or would have been projected, and he's not throwing around totals that are like we saw on the way down the first time, where he was putting up high 700s totals at a similar body weight. It hasn't really improved much from the initial cut down to Sheffield. So just to put that out there, and that wasn't a opener speed kind of session. You know, he was feeling very positive about the deadlift, but the bench moved pretty well, the squat moved okay, but the numbers and the speeds on those lifts and the timing of it doesn't indicate to me that there is some, another level to unlock from that 740 total that we're going to see in the short amount of time we had before Worlds.
Well, I mean, to be honest, like he was hitting 815, 820, I think 825 at 71. So if he's 70, 1 kilo less, and he's around 740, this is a whole nother shell coming into this Worlds. Now, does he have his foot off the gas? Is he dealing with injuries? I'm not sure. But Avery Jackson hit 720 at Americans. He's young and definitely on the uprise. And 740, I'm not saying is Shell's top end for Worlds. But if he is dealing with something that we're not aware of, if the cut is tougher, or he got a little looser on the diet and he's not as strict, so the cut is tighter in terms of timeline. If he's dealing with something, if 740 is near the top end and becomes a top end, it's not at 70 kilos, but when he's 66, if 740 range or mid 700s at all, if that total drops to there, can Avery Jackson cover that delta? Can he hit around 740? Can he add 20 kilos onto his total? He had before leading into Powerlifting America. I don't know if your Team Norway, you want to have Avery answer that question for you. I think you don't want that question to even be on the table. If I was Team Norway, I'm just saying that's pretty interesting. Before swinging around the table, Satake, veteran of the game, and a little bit of information here in terms of Santos. This is his third Worlds. Previous Worlds, he's in the 74s, and he came in 16th, cut down to the 66s, came in 8th, and now at this point looks like he's going to be top 4, possibly the podium, depending on how it all shakes up for him. So he's a veteran at the World Championships as well, and cutting down from 74s, he's seen some success and might end up on the podium, depending on how Satake ends up performing. You never know. It's quite the venture from Japan over to Germany. So we'll see. We might have a bit of a fight for the podium, but let's take it back to the shell question, because like you and like everyone else, I'm assuming it's going to grab a lot and garner a lot of attention. Let's swing around the table real quick. We're now collecting some data information. Everybody is very excited, rightfully so, when Shell dropped down. Let me also say, while I said Shell probably should have always been a 66, I mean just straight up to optimize his pound for pound. But if you're talking career-wise, you'd be a fool not to have grabbed the world record at 74. Oh, by the way, the rivalry with none other than Taylor Atwood, going 1-1 at the World Championship with Taylor. Grab a 74-kilo equipped World Championship, World Games. Of course, you would never give any of that up. I just meant in terms of optimization, the pound for pound, if that's all it was. But for sure, the way his career is rolled out, Hall of Fame, legendary, possible GOAT status, put a pin in that. Swing around the table right now. We got more data points. Does Shell, as a 66 in his career, ever hit 800 kilos? Matt Gary.
I'm not betting against him.
That photo shoot at Sheffield humbled you, sir. That photo shoot at Sheffield we had to do in the banquet. Trying to avoid that.
That plan was a disaster already. So I'll say yes.
Okay. Rory, or sorry, let's go to Eric. Eric, you made some valid points. You're collecting data just off of what you see, his age, everything. Do we see 800 kilos out of him?
I think Chell. I think he needs to find a more if he can find a more sustainable path to staying closer to 66 and he can make the lifestyle changes. The big difference, I'll tell you this. If he sees it as I need to do a cut to 66 each time versus I need to create a lifestyle which enables me to sit around 68, 69, um, then no. But if he can find a way to sustainably hang out a little bit lighter and stabilize there, then yes.
Rory?
No, no, I don't think he hits 800 at 66. It seems like sustaining even a hard cut from 66 is just taxing on him. Like his first foray into it, we were sitting here going, hey, look, is 800 possible? Is 780 possible? And now we're sitting here going, hey, look, that 740 he did a couple of weeks ago was like pretty hard. To Eric's point, if he can sort of find a way to sit closer to that weight class more sustainably, that would definitely help his prospects. I think like the yo-yoing between rapid weight cut into 66 and then having to did I hear you say before he cut into euros where he weighed in at 73.5? Yeah, so like the yo-yoing between mid 70s and like rapid weight cut range into 66 is not going to be doing him any good. I don't think he has 800 at 66 in the future.
Now let me throw this around the table. Does Avery Jackson establish himself as a number 266 in the world? Keep in mind, obviously, Garcia returns for Team USA for World Games. Penna has one more 66 appearance, possibly more, but he's indicated he might leave. However, for the 2025 year, does he post up the number 2 total in the 66s and establish himself? Matt?
Yes.
Eric?
Yeah, the way you phrased it right at the end there, I don't think he has established himself as the number 266. I think he will at Worlds. I have heard some people, or I would, that's not true. I think some people would go, oh, has he traveled? This is international. He's young, but he has competed previously in other meets and has traveled a decent way. And, his performance at nationals and I think where his head's at are all signs that tells me he's going to be consistent and effective. So yeah, I think we're going to see a good performance from him at Worlds, and I think that will establish him as number 2.
Rory?
I agree. I think we will see him established as a number 2. I think his head is in a really good place. Like he's relatively humble. He's like he knows that he doesn't know things. He's gaining strength at like a pretty rapid pace. He's got all of the early signals that he is going to go a really long way. So yes, I think so.
And of course, Shell, who is probably not long for this world as a 66.
Man, you make it sound like
That's so.
I know how to get the reactions, huh? He might be the next one up. Avery might be the next one up. It's not totally inconceivable. We see a lot of people jumping up, though. We see a lot of people's totals in training jumping up. You see Joe Jordan is now, I mean, this is in the gym. I don't know what his body weight was at, but Joe Jordan hitting in the mid 700s. And Joe Jordan will be at World Games. And Joe Jordan now is hitting in the mid 700s now. In his home, what is his body weight? Blah, blah, blah. I know. I got you. Go ahead, Eric.
I want to say something about World Games that I think is going to be really interesting. Because of the combined weight classes and the fact that it is on formula, we're going to see kind of some of the real effects of weight cutting because people are going to come in at where they think they are strongest, and it'll often be between weight classes. right? And I think that that's going to be a really, really cool data point for us. And I also personally, I've heard talk, and this is a side quest, so we don't have to follow this, Ryan. You're the host. People have been saying that the World Championship is a more important title than World Games. I dispute that. I feel like that's just a lack of awareness of what World Games is because it's only been on the equip side. I think this is a step above. In my mind, a world game title is higher than a world championship title. It's like the Olympics for us. It comes around every 4 years, and you have to be on the podium at Worlds to even get there. So it is a championship of championship. It's got what Sheffield has, but it's not a industry money meet. It is like Super World Championships, in my opinion. So I just as a side note, my personal ranking is World Games, World Championships, Sheffield as far as titles, arguably. So yeah, if we want to argue about that senselessly, we can.
Okay. Well, the only reason why I put Worlds over World Games is I'm not a big formulas guy. I agree with you in a couple things. I think we'll see some interesting because you could see
But
two
it's
weight classes.
formulas within small weight classes, so I think that's a fairer comparison. You're getting
Though,
less mathematical
I,
drift.
I got you, but you will have guys weigh in less, total less, but beat somebody else in their quote unquote same weight class. And I'm not a fan of that. Like I'd rather a straight up. I like the weight classes of worlds. But I got you. I like that we have world games. I like that we have these options. I really do. And that it's a multi-sport event with all these others. I'm just not quite there with the formulas at all with that piece. I do wish 66s were not with 59, so we could see a slightly larger penna, a slightly larger. Some of these guys, 66 is slightly larger. Unfortunately, that's not the case the way the weight classes are together. But anyways, I digress. We'll end up into we'll save it for the World Games preview. But sorry, Rory, did I throw this to you already?
About Shell hitting 800?
Yes. Yeah, that's
Yes.
right. That's right. We did. And sorry, we're talking about Avery Jackson establishing himself as the second. With guys like Joe Jordan stepping up, I am interested though how Joe Jordan performs, albeit it's at World Games, which is a whole lot further away from America than Germany is. But we got all of 2025, and Joe Jordan could possibly compete again. I'm very interested in how the rest of the weight classes go, because if Shell stays around 770 and you become a sitting target, not a moving target, you got guys like Joe Jordan who are around abouts 10 years younger, Avery Jackson around abouts 10 years younger. You stay at 770 too long, they're going to catch you. They're not standing in one place. All right, let's move into the 74 kilo class. I believe this is yourself, Rory.
Yeah, that's right. I'm actually going to start at the top for this one because I think that this is going to be the Austin Perkins showcase. And don't get me wrong, sports is sports. We're still a little bit more than a week out than when this class happens. Injuries happen. People come out of nowhere. Like stuff can still happen. It's not a sure thing. None of these things are sure. But he has the biggest PR total by 70 kilograms. Currently holds the world record total at 63 kilograms more than the person nominated in second. He is looking so strong. So we were actually looking at a squat that he put up just before we started recording, where he squatted 315 there's 3 reps in the video. I actually don't think it was a triple though. But he squatted 315 for at least a couple of reps there. And that's just, more than anyone else's PR here by like 40 kilos. Like he did at least a double with 40 kilos more than the next closest guy's PR. If I understand correctly, he's not heavy either. I don't know what his actual body weight is. But like I believe that he doesn't like cut a ton of weight or anything. I don't know what to tell you. I think this is going to be the Austin Perkins does a runaway. And then there is maybe a little bit of a scrap for the rest of the podium. Um, One thing that I'm wondering about, and I would actually like all of your opinions on, is does Austin break the world record total at this meet? And let me sort of provide some context as to why I think he may do it, even though it's maybe not the best like tactical decision or financial decision. Um, he's having a baby, or his wife is having a baby very shortly after Open Worlds. And he may have a little bit of a moment here where the iron is hot for him to strike at that world record total again, that he may not have come Sheffield, right? Like he'll be a relatively new father still by the time Sheffield rolls around. He may not be able to come into that with the same energy and vigor that he's been able to previously. And so I wonder if he's going to strike now while he has the opportunity, just knowing that that opportunity might not come up again like this for some time. What do you guys think?
Matt, you go ahead first.
Yeah, it's a very valid point. I mean, I think we've seen the effects of fatherhood and outside life stressors on a variety of other athletes, namely, Jesus Olivares, Jurens Kangamu, Taylor Atwood, amongst others. And that's not to say that they haven't, Chell Backlund, of course, that they haven't still, after initially taking a hit, come back around. But I think Rory's point is that's all, going to be happening quite soon, right? And so I think that's why, he might be in a situation where he's got to strike while the iron's hot, so to speak. And to Rory's point, just reading the training, I don't think he's ever looked stronger. So, tomorrow's not guaranteed. I know we say that often, and it's cliche, and a lot of people say, oh, well, you don't want to mess up the Sheffield bag, but there's no guarantee that he gets to Sheffield. With regards to life situations and so forth. So, perhaps he wants to really drop the hammer on this one, put his foot on the gas and see what his body's truly capable of, which would be a lot of fun to see. But I think only Austin and his coach, Joe Stanek, can answer those questions. So it's all speculation by us.
There's a reason why Penna lifted at the last one. People pull out, people get injured. There's a reason why we got reserves. It happens all the time at Worlds, at Sheffield, at the biggest. So to your point about if you were this strong and you think you have it in you, Taylor Atwood said, I freaking was, there were times when I'm like, I held back and I shouldn't have. I was strong and I was uninjured. And then later on you get injured and you're looking back and like, God, that was the time. I coulda, woulda, shoulda. Eric, what do you think?
Ryan, am I misremembering, or did Austin not indicate in his last podcast appearance that he was actually not going to be doing World Games? Yeah.
I think he's not doing it.
That's right.
Yeah, so that to me is very much along the lines with what Rory's talking about.
Yep.
Also, Austin has, I wouldn't say he's modeled his career on Taylor, but he definitely has looked up to him, seen what he's done, seen him as the person he is, trying to become the version of for this newer generation. And Taylor has been very open about how he wishes he'd done certain things earlier and not held back, and really just, shown the world what he's fully capable of, and which is why he felt so good about his performance at PA Nats. So like Matt Gary said, this is of course speculation on all our parts, but I think he's going to go all out. And regardless of whether that edited 315 video was a single, a double, or a triple, let's say it was a single, the speed on that sucker was an opener. So what are we talking about as far as top end on that day if he'd maxed out like 340 something? I mean, come on. So he's very, very strong, and I'm excited to see. And let's not forget how he was actually disappointed in the Sheffield performance, which is bonkers. Oh, only did 840, come on. So I think we see something that is, I think we see the best total out of him at Worlds. That's my prediction.
I think you might drop the hammer as well. And because of the having a kid, having to forego World Games, be a student of the game, seeing guys before him, if the biggest plus you can have in life is learning from other people so you don't have to go through those bumps yourself. And Taylor openly says, yeah, I made a couple of mistakes. And I think Austin will learn off that as well as his own experience at Sheffield. Look, if he held back waiting for Sheffield rolls around and it wasn't there. It's not promised. And you do that enough times. Well, you hold back a Worlds for Sheffield. Sheffield happens again. It's not there. Your prime is only so many years. If it's here, make hay while the sun shines. Drop that hammer, young man. And judging by I agree with everything Roy said in terms of his scouting. 320 deadlift looked like it was still warm up. His 315, here's what the heck is going on? Why did he edit between his reps? It throws you for a loop because it's clearly 3 of them, 3 reps, but how long are you resting with 315 on your back as a 74 or 74? How long are you resting that you need to edit it? Like how many seconds? You don't need to edit.
Totally be overthinking this. Like it could be, he could have taken 1 breath and gone for it again. And he's just like, yeah, that's
why would you edit that breath?
Right. Edit out the 33 seconds breath.
Why? Why would you edit that?
But worst case, let's say it's a single. Do you guys agree that was like a 7.5 RPE? That was an opener.
I would imagine a 7.5 triple. Sorry, go ahead, Matt. Why? What's going on?
No, I agree with what everybody's saying. I also know Austin quite well in terms of his squatting ability. And he's, as I said before on this podcast, he's one of the most explosive lifters I think we've ever seen, but he's really fast until he's not. And so there's a big, there's a drop off. So I would anticipate at Worlds, something. I mean, look, here's a fun fact. If we take up his PBs and we just add his PBs together, that puts us at 860.5, which is more than he's ever done. So if he just has a modest increase on his numbers, we're talking probably closer to 870. So I would anticipate a squat somewhere between 325 and 330. I don't think they're going to load anything more than that because, again, it might look like he has a lot more, but I think the drop off, and he's probably going to bench a small PB to 202, 205. And then, hey, the sky's the limit in the deadlift. He can take whatever he wants at that point. So I think, the possibility of us seeing an 870 out of Austin is very plausible because just adding up his PBs and Eric is shaking his head and saying no.
No. I'm shaking my head at just how amazing that would be. I agree with you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, we shall see, but I don't think we're going to see, based on how the 315 looked, regardless of how many reps it was, I don't think we're going to see something like a 340. I think we're going to see somewhere between 325 and 330, obviously with a chip on it so that they play the strategy game just in case. And so that's what I would anticipate.
Now we went super duper heavy into the Austin discussion, as like you would assume. You have the pound for pound king in this weight class, but we do have Chunchi Fan in the mix. Clinton Lee, Joshua Wright. We got some veterans in here as well as Leonardo. And they're all relatively. Chunchi obviously has a bit of a gap between the others in terms of previous totals posted, a little over 20 kilos, but in terms of making it onto the podium, it looks like we got a little bit of a fight here. Not a heck of a lot of posting from some of these gentlemen, so it's somewhat difficult to tell where their training is at, where they might lie, and who's ahead. Are we in agreement here? Do we think Chunchi Fan is likely second place silver medalist and the others are scrapping up behind him? Or Rory, what are your thoughts as this is your weight class?
I do think Chunchi Fan this is like my favorite for second, but I think that the 780 total is probably a little bit inflated over what he is capable of at the World Championships. So that 780 was done at the Asian Championships in Uzbekistan last year. And frankly, that competition is like known to be very lenient in terms of like some technical requirements. And so there is a lot of lifters who make a lot more attempts at that meet than they do on a similar day under stricter conditions. And so I actually think that the spread between second and probably about fifth, realistically, is a little bit like on paper, we're looking at it and it looks like it's about a 40 kilo spread between sort of 780 and 740-ish. I think in reality, it's going to be more like probably a 25 kilo spread. And 25 kilos when you're a 300 plus deadlifter is one really good attempt or like 2 mediocre attempts. So I'm saying Austin first, Chunchia Fan second, and then a real dogfight for third between Clinton, Joshua, Leonardo, and Kayan as well. However, I don't think like Chunchia is not safe in second. Like he really needs to make a lot of attempts there.
I agree with Rory, and I really like Joshua Wright for potentially even taking that silver. I mean, look, if Chun Chia-Fan shows up and puts something close to that 780, presumably, he would be in that pole position for the silver. But I really like Joshua Wright and the ability, particularly his consistency, his execution. And I do know that his recent PB total that he did at Euros, because I was right there to witness it all, of 755 was conservative. There was more in the tank and more meat on the bone on those lifts. And so I think if he stayed kind of injury-free, niggle-free, if you will, going into this prep with Jason Tremblay being his coach, I would see big things coming out of Joshua Wright. And, I would like him for bronze and possibly even sneaking into silver if Chunchia Fan doesn't, perform to the level that we saw, last year.
Using British vernacular with the niggles and the whole nine.
That's
man.
it.
Look at you,
got it.
culturally adapting. But
well dressed.
yeah, rocking the Union Jack. But Joshua Wright, freaking, if I read his post correctly, turning either he's 39 or he's turning 39. First off, you'll never guess that by looking at the guy. But hitting PRs, while knocking on the door of being a master lifter and absolutely as jacked and shredded a 74 as you're going to find. I mean, these guys are redefining what people assume. I talk to, you talk to people like, oh, he looks great for his 40s and the guy looks average. No. Let me talk to you about freak level athletes and genetics out there and what hard work will do for you. But I agree. Anything else you think you guys want to throw out for the 74s? We're good to move on to the 83s.
I would just say I think Chunchia Fan is still got a second place relatively sewn up, in my opinion. Kind of his to lose because let's throw Asian champs out. He did 770 at Lithuania and Worlds last year. So there's only like a 10 kilo difference. And importantly, if you look at the lifts that he did at Asians versus Worlds, same squat. So it wasn't like that squat was, a high squat that got passed, most likely. Went up on the bench press. And I think the bench press is one of the ones where there's a little less wiggle room for leniency, as far as calls. And typically when people miss a bench with loose calls, it's either like a fast press command, which can make some difference. Or they don't care as much if there's a little bit of up-down movement, which makes it harder, if anything. So 215, so 2 kilos up. And then the deadlift, which, if there's a soft lockout, that's one thing, 310. So got the same thing he finished on a second attempt at Worlds at Asia's and then went up to 310. So I would expect something between 770 to maybe slightly over 780 if he has a better day. Which, I think Joshua Wright is definitely, he has more in the tank. I'm not sure he has that much more in the tank. So I think it's kind of Chunchia Fan's second place to lose. That's the only thing I would add.
Chunchia, that is the world record bench, by the way. So he'll have a chip available there, most likely, if he wants it.
Excellent points. Before we move on, gentlemen, we'll have to see how the podium shakes up as we move into the 83s. I believe who had this weight class? Matt, and why wouldn't it be you with two Brits vying for the top spot? And of course, an American coming in #1 nomination. It might as well be you, an American, British. It's all you, my friend. Walk us through it. I'm sure we're all going to want to throw out some points, though.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a fun one. And I know that this session is going to aggregate a lot of eyeballs. Fun fact, they also extended this A group session up to 12. So we're not dealing with the small flight of 8. I don't know that would affect these 83 kilo guys. They seem to bounce back and regenerate and recuperate and have the ability to compete quickly and recuperate between attempts. Here's a fun fact before we kind of dive in. On the men's side, we have 4 returning world champions out of the 8 weight classes. And this is one of the classes where we have a returning world champion. And so I respectfully believe that when analyzing any weight class, it begins with a discussion about the returning world champion, because as the expression goes in boxing, you have to knock out the champ. So if you want to come and take that title, then you're going to have to take it from the champion. And so we have a returning champion in this class. And I know if you take a quick look at the nominations, everybody's glaring at that, big 900 kilo total by Joe Borenstein that he did at PA Nationals, and just set this total into the stratosphere, hitting numbers that, we thought had never been possible. But let me remind you of what happened last year when Russell Orr was nominated with an 860 kilo total to Jurrens Kangamo's 823.5. That was a 36.5 kilo gap coming into Worlds. And oh, by the way, that was both on 9 for 9 days. So that was Jurrens' best total heading into last year, 823.5 on a 9 for 9 day. This year, we have a 47.5 kilo spread between Borenstein at 900 and Jurrens at 852. So even a bigger spread than we had last year. However, Jurrens' PB total came at Sheffield on a 7 for 9 day. So that was with a couple of misses. So more meat on the bone there. So just beginning with Jurrens, we're talking about a returning world champion. I will be coaching him on the day, in terms of ethics, and on our side, at least. I can only speak for our team. Whenever we have two people in the same class that are vying for the same goal and are within striking distance of one another, they each deserve their own person to look after them, their own person to advocate for them. I use the analogy lots of times that we're a defense attorney for that person. And so I will be coaching Jurrens. My cohort, Alex Pearson-Jones, better known as Peach, will be coaching Ade. And so I can speak extensively about Jurrens' training, and I could just tell you now that his training has gone outstanding. He's healthy. He's well within body weight. He has not posted a lot of his top end. I will say this, you can look at Instagram. He hit a 300 double today, a few days back. He hit a rep PB in the bench. And again, he's been kind of hiding his deadlifts, and I'm not going to divulge where we're at. I'm just going to say this, that my man is coming fully loaded. He's ready to do battle. And you're going to have to take the championship from him. And I don't care what these other totals say. So you're just going to have to come and take it. And Joe Borenstein, respectfully, he is without question, as he has already displayed at Powerlifting American Nationals. We all know that he is the strongest man in the room by total. He's proven that. He did it under strict conditions, but also, as I said last time, of all the meets that he's done in the United States, he's barely had to travel for any of them. And I'm not saying, I want everybody to hear me clearly, I'm not saying that he can't come overseas and do the deed. I'm saying he hasn't yet. So he still has to do all of those things. This is the big leagues. He's got to fly overseas. He's got to deal with the time zone change. He's got to deal with the strictest judging in the world. He also has a coach behind him who apparently is studying to be a brain surgeon, and that's fantastic. But brain surgery, this is not, okay? Powerlifting coaching is not brain surgery, and that's not to make us look bad and dumb it down. It's just to say that those two things are very separate things. He has not coached at the international level, and you're going up against a lot of teams here with some very experienced coaches. Again, not to say that they're incapable, just to say that they haven't done it yet. Joe Borenstein's training has looked good, has looked on the rise. I think he's probably even with or beyond, I think, leading into what he's done at Powerlifting American Nationals. Recently, he'd done a 295 double on May 7th. I have here in the chart, he doubled 205 in the bench. He's got a really big lead in the bench, right? And the world record in the bench by Owen Hubbard is 218.5. We saw Joe do 218 at Powerlifting American Nationals. So will he go after a chip there? He'd probably be wise to, I would think, right? If it's there on the day. So there's probably a chip available, or at least primed for the taking, or whether or not they'll play a conservative. We saw him go all in on the deadlift on his second attempt at Powerlifting American Nationals. Very high risk, high reward. Okay. Joe, I would encourage you to do that again, please. Just load up for what you think you need early on. As a matter of fact, put it on your opener. That way you don't have to come out for your second and third deadlift. Why waste energy? Just put it on the bar for your opener. Aim for 910, whatever it takes to get to 910, because you've been talking about 910, 920. Just load it up on the opener, and that way you only have to pull it once, and then you're done. So, no, I say that in jest. I don't anticipate that they would do that again, but you never know. Interesting fun fact, he's got the lowest hit rate out of all of the competitors that are kind of, in play here. He's got a 6.7 average out of 9. And he only makes 40% of his third deadlifts. And I think we can all agree that second deadlift that he took at Powerlifting American Nationals was really, really revving the engine. We've discussed it ad nauseum. Would he have had a third one? That's debatable. He might have had a couple kilos left. So it's going to be really interesting to see what Joe can produce on the day. I think everybody is clamoring for 900. Can he hit 900? Can he go beyond 900 at Worlds? That remains to be seen. And like I said, not saying that he's incapable, just saying that he hasn't. This is a show and prove sport. You're going to have to come over there. You're going to have to show it. You're going to have to prove it against the world's best. And yes, you competed against some of the world's best at Powerlifting American Nationals. Let's not forget about Ade Omasakin, who I think a lot of people think, the undercurrent that I'm hearing about Ade is that, kind of this untapped potential, right? Like he's, a lot of people say or think that he's the only one that can approach Bornstein, and we just haven't seen, him, all of that come to fruition, specifically with the deadlift. He stood up with that last deadlift at Sheffield so quickly that he kind of lost his balance. And so I think that seems to be Ade's ace card. He hit an 852.5 kilo gym total as recently as May 15th. Obviously, he was heavy. That was with a 305 doubled squat. He had a 357.5 for 3 in the deadlift. And I think everybody also saw when he did 325 for 7. I don't put a lot of stock personally in rep sets on deadlift. I think we all know that's been well documented. Eric could talk about that ad nauseum, about the stretch reflex, this, that, and the other. So it'll be really interesting to see what Ade can produce as well. I know that he's healthy. He's as strong as he's ever been. Obviously I've been privy. We have an athlete monitoring system, and I've had my, fingers on the pulse of these two lifters. And I just know that Ade and Jones are both coming in primed and ready. And I would anticipate seeing their best. They know what's at stake. They know the formidable opponent that Joe Bornstein is. And this is a situation where you're going to have to make 9 lifts, right, to be in contention. You are going to have to, and it's the first person who blinks. And, with Joe's 900 kilo total, I know a lot of people think that, maybe he could miss one. So, that remains to be seen if he plays it conservative on his squat. And then kind of rounding out the rest of the conversation, of course, we've got Tim Monagatti there, nominated 4th from New Zealand. Hasn't been posting a lot in terms of the squat and the bench. And that seems to be kind of characteristic with Tim. I don't know if the lads here from Down Under have any more information. He did post a comfortable 300 kilo squat on May 4th. Rory's kind of raising his hand, so I'll defer to him for a second.
Tim has been injured. He is on the upswing, but the reason that he pulled out of Sheffield was an injury. Right. And he is not 100% healthy again yet. He's definitely on the upswing, but not 100% healthy at the moment.
Right. So, yeah. So look, I think we all, the coaches and the fans of the sport want every lifter to come primed and ready and in top form. And the reality is that for these championships, I think hardly everybody ever arrives, feeling 100% pain-free. So we hope that Tim can bounce back and be the healthiest version of himself. Of course, we've got Enaharo there, who's nominated 5th with an 812.5 kilo total. Haven't seen much from him in terms of squats and benches. Of course, we saw that big 365 kilo triple. That was back in April. So not certain if he's done circa that since, or if he has, maybe he's put it in his story and we've missed that. I know that he's been saying, whatever it takes, I'm going to pull and I'm going to load up. We saw him do that last year in Lithuania. Having said that, he is probably the most erratic of the contenders. I mean, the data say what they say. He averages 5.6 out of 9 attempts, and also only 37% connect rate or hit rate on those third deadlifts. So he truly is the wild card in terms of whether he's able to connect with that final pull. We've also got Kalle Johansson there. This is only he's only done 2 meets at 83. So he's in this situation where he's probably still just kind of coming on into his own physique-wise. understanding leverages and the body and how he moves. He did hit a 287.5 kilo PB squat as recently as 2 days ago. He also benched 200 kilos, and he hit a really easy 315 deadlift. That was back in March, but that was only 10 kilos under his PB. So presumably there's a lot more in the deadlift. So I would anticipate him to hit a PB total. Whether or not he'll be in striking distance for the podium, probably not, but again, can represent himself very well. And then, of course, kind of the other two, players, if you will, that could potentially make some noise into that top five is Rambo from France, coming in with an 800 kilo total. And then of course, Ryan's best mate there, Kafui, also nominated with he has an 800.5 best kilo total, and he's a big deadlifter as well. Saw him post a 317.5 kilo deadlift about 5 days ago, which, honest to God, it moves so fast, if you'd have blinked, you'd have missed it. It almost looked like a last warm-up. So he could be a contender there. But we've got some really heavy hitters, and I think when you talk to most people, their money is going to be on Bornstein, and they're just wondering how the podium's going to shake up. And of course, I'm flying the GB flag, so I'm going to sound like a homer in that regard. But I'm just telling you, we plan on making it as difficult as possible as we can. And again, if you want the crown, you're going to have to come take it from the world champion. And that world champion that people need to put their respect on is Jurgens Kendamo.
Quick question for you, Matt. Are you still an American citizen?
As
Want it on the record. I need to see identification. I'm sorry. Your word isn't good enough at this point. I need you to show me. Many
times, American by birth and British head coach by the grace of God. And so,
all right, okay. You've practiced that, but that's
yes,
fine.
I have. Yes, I have.
Yeah.
So,
all right. Well, you came media ready, and I appreciate that, sir. Look, you did a phenomenal job setting up the 83s. First off, freaking well done. Let me ask a couple questions here, and then open it up. Everybody can say whatever they want after this. But let me swing around the table. Will we see 900 kilos at the IPF World Championships? Matt, you go first, kind sir.
No.
Eric Helms.
I don't think so either. And I'll tell you why. I think it's not necessary for him to break a world record or potentially win. So I think he will probably take what he needs to get the title.
I think he's the type of guy that neither of those 2 points will. Yeah, I think the way he operated American US Nats with that second attempt, the whole night. He's the type of guy, whether he needs it or whatever.
I recognize that, but this is the first time he's been on a national team, and that is a little different. I don't know the landscape of the current national team. That would probably be the best person to answer that would be Matt Gary, who has previously worked in those conditions. But that would be under certain national teams strongly inadvised in a position where, and he's also publicly admitted, like, hey, maybe I didn't take the best attempt strategy, hitting 900 on my second. So I don't even say this necessarily from the perspective of you should save it for the Sheffield. I'm saying that this is probably a little closer than it looks if you just look at the nomination tables for all the reasons Matt Gary talked about. And the smart move is to secure a world title and then take an opportunity in other places. We're kind of going back to the pre-Sheffield era of powerlifting. You're not going for PRs at Worlds. You're going for a world championship title, and then you hit the PRs at other times. It's kind of my perspective in this one.
And that's another reason. Sorry. That's let me just add to that just a little bit of flavor. That's another reason why, like, for instance, if we look at these world records, right, we've got a 338 kilo world record in the squat. That's Russell, or nobody's touching that, presumably, right? So that's going to remain on the board. But the bench there might be for the taking. And the only person who has a possibility to take that would be Joe Bornstein. And so the question remains, is that something that they want to risk going for that chip? It's a very valuable piece of, strategic leveraging that into your, stacking chips, if you will, literally and figuratively. That's a valuable tool there. But will they just play it a little bit more conservative and maybe he only benches 215 or, or something like that. I don't know. And that, of course, remains to be seen. Just, the bench can take a hit after traveling abroad and this and that. And I don't think that he cuts a lot of weight, but that's one lift that, sometimes is the last to kind of show up, if you will. And I hate using that analogy, but sometimes the bench doesn't travel, is all I'm saying. So we'll see.
Rory, did we see 900 kilos at Worlds?
No. A wise man, I think his name was like Gat Mary or something, said that you can be a world champion one day a year. You can set a PR any day. And so I think Joe admitted it himself, and you could see it on his face when he finished that second deadlift at PA Nationals. That was not a good decision. He was, I don't know. I don't even know how to quantify it. He was not far from missing that deadlift. And if he had missed it, the US men's team would probably have different people on it right now. Right. And so in this meet in particular, he's got Ade, he's got Durans, he's got Tim, depending on how well he shows up. He's going to have Enahoro loading up like whatever he needs to try jump ahead as well. He probably can't afford to make that kind of mistake at this meet. 900 is a big number. He's the strongest man in the room. But like if he goes in and if he goes 6 for 9, it's not going to matter. He's not going to be the best powerlifter if he goes 6 for 9. So I think that some caution would be advised with the attempt selection. I think he will be herded in that direction by the US coaching team. And I suspect he will not end up hitting 900. I still think he's going to win. I just don't think that the margin is going to be the 40 kilos that it looks like on paper.
I think he does 900.
Do you just like
No, I swear to God, this is not. I will do that. I will do the contrarian and whatever, but I promise you, I think he goes 900. And anybody who wants to beat Joe Bornstein at Worlds, I think you need to start wrapping your head around. You have to do 900 as well. Let me throw this out there now. Enahoro, when we're looking at 845 range, will load up for that win. And he stated, as Matt said, and I read the same thing, Matt, I'll load up. I'm going to load up. I don't care who's there. Cool. When it was 840 range, to cover that delta, he was loading up over 900 pounds in Lithuania. If we're talking closer to 900 kilos, whether or not you think 900 or 890, what the fudge is he going to be loading up to cover that delta in his third? Do you guys think Enahoro loads up for the win in 2025 Worlds like he has every Worlds for the past few years? Matt Gary.
No, I think he's going to look at that number, and that number is going to be too far away. So I think what he'll try to do is load up for the podium instead.
So you're calling him a coward. Okay. Eric Helms.
Oh, okay. I basically have the exact same answer as Matt, because there is a point where it looks like you are being a stalwart, strive for the gold, die hard, winner, and there's a point where it's just cringe, where it's like, are you really going to go out there and just tug on something that's not going to come off the ground just because you feel like you have to because you said it before? Frankly, the class is advanced. It's not people fighting over low to mid 800s to see who can win. We're now questioning whether we're crossing 900. And while we don't have a tremendous amount of data from Enahoro, and I really do hope that his bench and his squat are going up, along with his deadlift, and that he is going to stay, that he is advancing his personal total relative to the advancement of the 83s. I think that that's a really big ask because of how much the class has advanced in the last several months. So nobody wants to see Enahoro come out and tug on an immovable object. I think it'd be awesome to see someone who was ranked near 8th or 9th pull into third, and that would be an incredible storyline in and of itself, and an intelligent move. And as much as there has been lately this rash of Ricky Bobby talk on King of the Lifts of, if you ain't first, you're last, I can tell you that when you really talk to athletes who are not in contention for first, they would much rather take third than eighth. So I think, and have a medal on their neck and get to stand on the podium and get to say, yeah, I am a world champion medalist at least, or something like that, or I got the deadlift record, or what have you. I think it would be foolish to not do that, respectfully.
I honestly, you really well set it up in that it doesn't prove anything to tug 1,000 pounds, doesn't move at all, and be like, thank you. And that doesn't like, hey, I go out on my shield. Not if it's just to do it to say you did it. It doesn't. What does that mean? But if he goes, okay, fine, let's take that off the table. I would love to see what his actual PR deadlift is. I mean, I don't think we're being robbed of seeing that, and I would love to see what the heck that is. Give me that. That's actually more entertaining. If it's unrealistic, show me what realistic your third dead is. I want to see, because it's not your PR that we have on record. And we're all dying to find out at this point. And if previously at Worlds, it kind of sort of made sense. The last Worlds Lithuania, we started stretching reality, squint, and maybe it made a little bit of sense. It left the ground, all right. But at least it left the ground. But now we're getting past that point. If it's past that point, don't do it. To your point, Eric, at one point it's heroic. You keep coming around with the same story that we all love to hear the first time, second time, third time starts getting a little cringe. You start becoming that guy. And he's not that guy. He's the deadlift demon. Let's see where that deadlift is at, my friend. Let's extend that world record. Maybe we've talked you out of any kind of anything else but agreeing with us, Rory. But are you in agreement? I'm assuming.
No, I agree. I'm looking at the numbers at the moment. The first time Anahoro loaded up to win and missed it was 2022. It was cute then. It was cool then. It's getting like progressively less cute seeing him come out and like just misses the deadlift again and again. And just like looking at Worlds last year, for him to jump from the deadlift that he had, which was 367.5 and an 807.5 total, to the circa 900 kilo total that we're talking about, he would need a deadlift 450. I don't know about you guys, but when I look at his deadlifts, even the ones that come off the floor, I don't think are particularly close. Like a lot of these misses, like a lot of people look at them and go, "Oh, they got it to his knees. It was halfway." I mean, he got it the easy half of the way. Yeah, he's a strong deadlift. Yeah, he's the deadlift demon, right? He can load up huge deadlifts. He has the potential for a world record deadlift. He doesn't have 450. I don't even think he has 400. Like what he probably needs to do is load up like a sensible number, not risk falling to Eric's point, like eighth. Come third, come fourth, get some team points, get on the podium or close to the podium, go 9 for 9, make a bunch of attempts.
The best way that he can serve himself and put him in a prime position to do what we're talking about is to be 8 for 8. And that's how you do it. So if you lean into being more consistent, building a total, engineering a total, and you're 8 for 8, then you will not be in the position where you need 410 plus to be in the conversation. Then maybe you're looking at, wow, I can pull 390, 395, somewhere circa that range, which is in all likelihood, I think we would agree, probably what he's capable of. He's pulled 380 and he's been close on a couple of others. So his PB is probably floating somewhere in that 90-ish, give or take a few kilos range. And so you serve yourself the best way if you're 8 for 8. And then you can, play the math game and see, what do I need to get on the podium and frighten some people?
I think it's going to be an absolutely sensational battle. I think it is closer than people think. I know 900 gets kicked around and all of a sudden it becomes overpoweringly attention grabbing, but it is closer than people think. And I'm very interested in seeing what gets produced. Very, very much. All right. we spent some time in there. Thanks for giving my man's Caffrey a little bit of love. I do think he's the favorite to win this, and you guys are all going to. When I said someone's going to total 900, I was talking about Caffrey, by the way, not Joey B. But let's see what happens. Going into the 93s, we got Rory who has this one. Rory, the battle of the 93s looks absolutely sensational. If people like U.S. nationals and thought that was close, well, we have Emil Krastev 917, we got Gustav 915, and Kaiko 919. So flipping close amongst the big three. These guys just have been passing the baton. Who's the number 193 in the world? Now, for a while there, it was Kaiko. Not anymore. It's the baton has been passed back and forth between these three gentlemen, and we're going to have a dramatic conclusion at IPF Worlds. Walk me through this, my man. What are we looking at here?
Okay. Before I get to those three, I actually want to talk about the people who I think are in the sort of like 4th to 6th range, because the 4th to 6th range is sort of like a bit of it's a little bit back. It's almost like there's like what do they call it in cycling? Like there's the chase group. There's like a chase group that's sort of 30 to 60 kilos back, which is enough that I wouldn't bet on them popping through and winning, but it does mean that these guys at the top do need to keep their heads screwed on tight, basically. And so I think the people who are in this like this chase group are Guillaume Jean-Marie Flore, who I think is probably good for around about sort of in the 860 to 870 range. Kweku Antwi from Canada, who I think again is probably good for around about 860. He hit a 823 training total in mid-May, so about 2 weeks ago, which was, in my opinion, about opener speed, and that's less than 20 kilos off his PB total. So I think he's got something big cooking there. And of course, Christian Ayundukan, who I think on a really good day, he's probably good for 890, maybe even a little bit north of 890. Like he is looking really, really good. Is he looking good enough to like pull ahead of, say, Jonathan Kleico? I don't think so. Not right now. But he is looking phenomenal. So his best total is 878.5. And just every lift that I've seen from him in training has been clean, fast, just 10 kilos on his squat PB. He had a 325 just like 2 or 3 days ago. Haven't actually seen a PB from his bench and his deadlift, at least not that he's posted publicly, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's at least been hitting some rep PBs there. Maybe Matt can fill in some details there later on. But like I would not be looking past those three guys as sort of the chase group. Right, let's talk about the top three. If I was a gambling man, I would not bet on this class because, man, like, what is happening here? So there's three people here, and I'm really struggling to be able to decide what placings I want to put them in, but I will put them in placings at the end. So Gustav Hedlund, of course, 915 at Sheffield. That was about a 20 kilo PB for him at the time. He's hit some really good fast numbers in training, quite sub-max. His bench in particular looks like he's made a bit of progress there. I think he hit a 222.5 in training just within the last week or so, and it looked, not like an opener or anything like that, but like it looked like he had a bit more gas in the tank, and that is a 2.5 kilo PB over his comp max. On a really good day, he would be able to take a crack at the squat record, the deadlift record, and the total record. I mean, you can't chip the total record, so I guess that's not relevant. But a really good day, he could probably take a crack at both the squat and the deadlift record. And so being able to get those chips, particularly if he can pick one up early on squats, puts a little bit of pressure on everybody else. And of course, Team Sweden coaching staff, who I rate very highly. I think, if there's a team to have that are going to get a good performance out of him, that would be one of the teams that I would pick. Emil Krastev, his best total of 2.5 kilos more than Gustav's 917. That is not a lot of breathing room. So slightly weaker on squat, roughly similar deadlift, but he has got a bench press on him. So his best bench press in competition, 237.5. His training just looks good. He also does all of his bench on what looks like a crappy commercial rig in like a CrossFit style gym. And I think that just means that on a comp bench, which is just like a little bit more stable and he doesn't have to unpack as much to get it out of the rack, I think it just carries over a little bit better, right? Hit an 885 training total on the 30th of May. So that was, or at least he posted it on the 30th of May. So that was about 2 days ago, which is the same as what he posted about 2 weeks out from Sheffield. So 2 weeks out from Sheffield, he posted 885 and then hit like a 915 or something about a week out from Sheffield. So he's hit 885 yesterday, which was for him about 2 weeks out. And so I'm picking that we're going to see sort of something in the 910 to 920 range training total in the next 5 days or so. So on a good day, could pick up the bench record as well. Problem there for him is that Jonathan Kaiko has an even bigger bench press. He hit 252 at PA Nationals, which was in was that February?
April.
Sorry?
April.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, 3 lift nationals, April, yeah.
Thank you. So he hit 252. He's just looking strong, right? He took that time off. He's come back uninjured with like the fire and vigor sort of built under him again. He does have the biggest total of these men, but it's by 1.5 kilos. Like it's not anything that I would rest on. So end of May, again, only just within the last couple of days, he hit 290, 240, 320, all relatively easy. I'm picking that he's in quite a high fatigue state at the moment. Those are very comparable to the numbers that he was hitting sort of a similar distance out before PA Nationals. So he hit the same bench and deadlift and just a little bit less on squats this time around. And so again, he could potentially he is going to take a crack at the bench record and attempt to pick up a chip on the way through, which will be a bit of an advantage for him as well. So nominated totals here are 919, 917 and a half, 915. That's 4.5 kilos between first and third. I'm picking that all of these men are good for something between about 910 and 920, depending on exactly how they show up on the day. So given that, the order that I want to put these in is Kaiko first, Gustav Hedlund second, Emil Krastev third. But like I said, I would not put money on the outcome of this event.
It's the closest. 1.5 kilos between number 1, number 2, 4 kilos total between number 1, number 3. And when you're talking about who you're talking about, like Hedlund, Sheffield champion, world champion, Kaiko, multiple time world champ, Emil Krastev, what he did at Sheffield head up against Hedlund. It's freaking the toughest. Yeah, I don't even freaking know. Let me swing this around. Okay, Matt, you go ahead.
No, please ask your question, and then I think I'll add some flavor afterwards. Yeah.
Okay. So we heard Rory say between 910, 920. Makes sense. Their nominated totals are all between 910, 920. Kicked around a few times has been the possible 10 times kilo body weight. Do we think 10 times kilo body weight might appear due to these gentlemen pushing it that far? And we've seen that kind of stretch. Matt Gary, 10 times body weight at Worlds, yes or no?
No.
Rory.
No.
Or sorry, Eric. Okay, well, Rory, no.
Sorry,
Eric,
too fast. Get my name.
Also no.
Yeah. Look at these guys are oh so tight. You can't afford to miss. The only way you think you're going to see 10 times body weight is if you honestly believe all 3 of them are on the 10 times body weight range, because nobody's overextending just for any other reason. Go ahead, Matt. What were you going to say, sir?
No, what I was just going to add is that oftentimes, we talk about battles like these where the lifters are so tightly matched and only separated it's just razor thin on kilos. They all take a different circuitous route to get to their total, right? And so, obviously Kaiko builds the lion's share of his total in the second half, obviously with his world record bench press. And then of course his deadlift is on the come up, and you've got Emil there who kind of does the same. And then you've got Hedlund Gustav, who's, the reigning world champ and is the most well-rounded, if you will, of the three, where he's got a little bit more balance. He's got a bigger squat. And so, if his squat is on the come up, he's going to build, a significant portion of his total, jump out to an early lead, if you will. And his bench, as to Rory's point, is looking good. I think here's a fun fact also. I mean, it's like I said, there's three certainties in life. There's death, there's taxes, and there's Jonathan Kaiko using a chip on his third bench, right? And so he's going to, he has the world record at 245 and a half. We just saw him do 252 at Powerlifting American Nationals. And I know that his coach, Joseph Franzo, tends to be a little bit conservative on those third benches, and go for the sure thing. And that's important to do. It's just that now I think more than ever, these three lifters are probably closer than they've ever been. This might be the time to let the rope out just a little bit more, because sometimes his third benches look quite easy. So assuming that he doesn't have to cut a lot of weight, this might be the time when you want to stretch maybe just a little bit more. So I'll say this, it's almost certain that Kaiko is going to have a chip on that third bench. And that is going to be really valuable, because nobody's getting a chip on the squat. I don't think anybody, look, although I will say this, Gustav's PB in the squat is 335. That would be another fun question. Do we think he's going to take a shot at the world record squat, which is 341? And I don't know, coached by Carol Arvidsson, who she would be on my Mount Rushmore of game day coaches. She's one of the best game day coaches on the planet. I don't know if they would be that aggressive and go for that unless they are certain that he's good for, 342 to 345-ish. And then maybe they take the 341 and a half chip. I don't know. Anyway, I'm just saying that if Kaiko's the only one who's got a chip going into the deadlift, we might see either Crossstep or Hedlund have to put a chip on the final deadlift, because they're damn close in order to secure victory. So that would be kind of fun, because that world record is held by Chance Mitchell at 373 and a half, I believe. And so that would be really cool if we saw Kaiko with a chip and nobody else has a chip, and then it forces them to go for a world record pull in order to grab that, that gold medal. So, and again, that's assuming that all three lifters are going, they're 8 for 8 at that point. If we could be treated to what we saw at Powerlifting American Nationals, when all of the major players were 8 for 8, I think that's what we all want to see. And the only thing that I'll add that Rory was really wise to state is that Christian Iandokin, who's my lifter, is healthy. His training is on the upswing now after kind of being on a downtrend. And we're seeing the light of day, and he's getting a lot stronger. And I think Christian even kind of cheekily said in one of his last posts, kind of telling the top three, or the big three, if you will, he's like, you better not miss, because, and again, the misses at this strength level are larger because they're taking larger swings. So if you have a lifter here who misses a squat or a deadlift, that could be, that's 15 kilos, 12 and a half, 15 kilos. Christian goes 9 for 9. He could be in a position, sneaking up on a 900 kilo total or something, where he could possibly hop onto the podium.
Well, stranger things have happened for sure, especially
Right.
swing and miss at this level. Eric,
That's right.
anything you want to join in? These fellas did a pretty good job, but
They did a fantastic job. And I will say the one thing, and I'm glad Matt actually got to it right at the end there, is the chip on the squat, potentially by Gustav. This is I would hate to be in this coaching position, because it will potentially, to get it, take away from the deadlift, which could be the deciding factor. But given what I know of the Swedish coaching team, I think there will be a pivotal moment when we see what Gustav puts on for his third squat that may decide, or may predict, I'll be more conservative, who is going to win. I'll tell you this. My prediction, if Gustav chips the squat, he's going to win. Because that means he is strong enough that they felt confident doing that. He gets the chip advantage, and then he's the pacer. And everyone else is going to have to chase him. They're all close enough in deadlifts, and he will be enough in the lead with a chip to where he'll be in a very good spot. And I think because Keiko is going to be, he is the most consistent lifter out of these, but none of them are inconsistent. These are three good lifters who are also very similar in strength. So I think, yeah, we're gonna, if we don't know by the third squat, if Gustav does not do that, it's gonna come down to the final pull, assuming nobody misses. And this is a group of three gentlemen where we have a good probability of all going 8 for 8. We know Keiko is one of the most consistent lifters ever. And the coaching team of the Swedes and also Kedrick, they're all amazing platform coaches. So we've gotten a really good, like the 93s, like I said in the Outlier podcast, it is the peak of the bell curve of participation in men. So you do have three outliers right here, regardless of what our emotional decision of outliers are, which means they have a lot of things going for them because it's the only way they can be at the top. They have good coaching staff, they have the right headset, they are strong, and they're good power lifters. So it's really going to come down to almost a roll of the dice. But if Gustav is very, very strong and he can chip the squat, my prediction is when I see that third squat, if that is a world record chip, my prediction is he's going to win.
Gustav changing his coaching staff for prep leading into this world is going to be interesting. Alexander was coaching him through the Sheffield win, through the World Championship win, and now he's with Joe Stanek. And so it'll be interesting. That's a big move right in front of Worlds, coming off of some of the biggest wins in his PR total. It's a big move. Very interested in seeing what happens. Could be a talking point, but I agree. Look at his PR squat is just 6.5 kilos away from a world record. And that is a really tough position to be in because when you're in a battle this tight, sometimes the worst thing in the world to be is that close to a world record where it's right there, but might be just outside of an ask, just outside of where you would normally put your attempt. But it's too tight of a battle to balk at a chip. But is it too tight a battle to reach and potentially overreach? Because if you miss your third squat and you're the biggest squatter of the field, to your point, Eric, I would hate to be in this position. It is the worst.
The risk is going to be that like
worst.
the correct third squat for Gustav is like 337.5 or 340. Like, do you load 340? If 341.5 gets the
I
chip?
know. It's crazy. And it's a chip. It's crazy. I hate it. It's actually the worst. It's actually the worst.
This is why I made that prediction, because I think that if they load the chip, they are more than 50% confident that they will get it, which means he's strong, which means it won't. They also don't think it'll tax him too much to pull what he needs to stay competitive, because they're not going to trade they're not going to go, okay, it's fine. We can do a 350 deadlift because you can't. He will still need to pull something close to his max, even if he gets that. So if he's strong enough to put the chip on there, and that means everyone involved is given the thumbs up, and he gets it, he's going to have still a big deadlift left in him.
Only time will tell. And it's the craziest. But this is such a tight battle. All right. Moving on to the 105s. Rory, you're also queued up for this one. I was doing my research as well in the background, and this was a tough one because the fellas aren't really posting much. So we got previous data points of competition, talking points, from previous podcasts, etc. What they mentioned personal goals were, and of course, Anatoly returns. So Rory, I'll toss it to you, but we could all jump in afterwards as well.
Yeah, I'm actually going to go reasonably quickly through this one because most of these guys are just like not posting a lot. And so like the data that we have to go off is just, recent competition performances. And and not a ton else. I do tend to discount what people say that they're going to do, and I wait to see them do it. People can say whatever it is that they want to say, but I want to see you do it before I sort of incorporate, or I want to see you do something that predicts that that's viable before I really incorporate that. So I'll go really quickly through the actually honorable mention before I get into my top handful. I do want to mention Sanchez Dillon, just huge deadlifter. I think he's off podium, but he is a really big deadlifter. He's done 400 in a full power comp. He's done 405 in a deadlift only comp. He hit 400 in training about a month ago. That looked, I'm not going to say it was easy. It was 400 kilos, but there was a little bit left in it. So it's definitely one of those things where there are chases, and if he and if people in the top sort of pack swing and miss, they may be punished for that. So the top few that I've got here are going to be got Anatoly Novopesmeni. He has not been posting a lot of, he posts a lot of like rep PRs and things, like, he'll hit some huge squat for 7 reps, some huge bench for 8 reps, which is very hard to tell what that's going to turn into at the top end. He has been hitting a few rep PRs. His PR total is 940.5. I'm picking he's good for around about 940, maybe like 945 on a really good day, but I don't think we're going to see him come out and hit like a 960 or 970 or anything like that. There may have been a time where I would back him to do that, but it's probably not this time. I will say I don't want to underrate how good he is, though. Like, he's former best lifter in the world. His squat is just, it's like he's got an outboard motor attached to the back of his legs or something. Like, it doesn't matter what he puts on for a squat. I just believe that he's going to get it. Like, he could put on 380 and I go, yep, that seems like something Anatoly could squat. So like, he's a phenomenal lifter. I just think there's some like real up and comers in this class at the moment. Predicting it second, but not particularly confidently, I've got Keenan Lee, best total 958.5. He was a reserve from Team USA, but I'm glad that he's here. I'm not happy that Waskar is injured. That's unfortunate. But I'm glad that Keenan is here, because I do think that he is capable of more than what we've seen him hit previously. And I do want to see him in this battle. I do think he's going to be on the podium. I think he's going to come second. And he has potential for a world record squat, I think. Of course, he will have to fight Anatoly for it, but it is something that is sort of on the table. I think he's also potentially capable for a world record bench. He's just sort of like a couple of kilos off that world record bench as well. I think Anthony McNaughton is still the favorite. A bit of an unknown here is about how well he is going to be able to turn that sort of domestic total into an international total. He has competed internationally before. He competed in Turkey in 2022, so it's not his first time out the gate. But I think that the pressures that come with coming to Open Worlds, and particularly coming to Open Worlds with the highest nominated total, right? He's effectively the first seed here. Put a kind of pressure on you that is a little bit different to the pressure that is on you going to something like the Junior World Championships. Having said that, last time he did this, he went to Turkey, he did PR his total, and he did come second. So like, he's not completely new to this. It's very similar to travel. In fact, traveling to Germany is probably going to be a little bit easier and more comfortable than traveling to Turkey was. So that is sort of points in his favor there. I think he can probably take a crack at world record squat and bench as well. So again, if he wants the world record squat, he needs to take it off both Keenan and Anatoly. And I think that's a tall order, but his PB is only 10 kilos off. And on a good day, that's plausible, I think. I think more realistically though, probably taking a serious crack at the bench record. His PB is actually over the bench record. So I think likely to pick up a chip there. All of these gentlemen are, I think, out of reach of the deadlift world record, just because it is Sanchez Dillon's record, isn't it? It's just been set so high in comparison. But I haven't seen him post anything since PA Nationals. Obviously, that wasn't that long ago. He put up a really good total. And then since then, it's just been not radio silence because he's putting things on Instagram. They're just not lifting things. So a little bit hard to know where he's been since then.
So a couple of notes with John Song's a fast rising star in terms of coaching. First off, I mean, he's got some killers on his roster now. Anthony McNaughton leading that charge, McDouble Thick. And last year, we were all super impressed, rightfully so, by Bob Matthews, what he did at IPF Worlds and telling everybody in the 120s, do not get clapped by a 105. And then he proceeded to go out there and clap each and every one of them at the World Championships, putting up a monster total, weighing in at 105 point change. Okay. U.S. Nationals, Anthony McNaughton exceeded that total and clapped all the 120s at U.S. Nationals, save the gas lifter Rondell Hunt. So Anthony McNaughton is an absolute, all the praise that we gave Bob Matthews, and Bob Matthews gets tons of praise, and rightfully so. Pound for pound, one of the best lifters in the world, and choosing to be the David going against Goliath. Love that. In an era where a lot of people are cutting down, Bob Matthews is going to give up a heck of a lot of body weight, and he's chasing an absolute monster in Rondell Hunt. Let's hope that clash happens relatively soon. But Anthony McNaughton is on par with that. His name needs to be mentioned in that kind of a conversation. That's the special star that Anthony McNaughton is. And in terms of Keenan Lee jumping in for Waskar, who had to bow out, Keenan Lee was on the podcast, super duper confident, and he said straight up, I mean, he was getting married around U.S. Nationals time. This has been said to death, I know, and he was telling his wife, don't worry about the honeymoon. We're going to be honeymooning in Europe when I go to the World Championships after I win U.S. Nationals. Well, honeymoon's still on. And my man wasn't a liar. Here we are at the World Championships. Absolutely love it. Destiny strikes. If you're a hopeless romantic, we're on, baby. Save the tickets. Do not cancel them on Expedia. We're all good. All's well that ends well. However, he has taken it in late notice. His post gave confidence in saying he would not accept this spot over Taylor Atwood, no less, if he didn't feel he'd be ready. But what does ready mean? Does ready mean ready to win a world title and beat a special star like Anthony McNaughton, like I just said? Or does ready mean put on a great show, win medals, possibly break some records, and have a great total, but fall just short of a world title? We don't know. He also, to Rory's point, is not posting a heck of a lot. He mentioned he was in his Fat Thor phase when he got the call. And I don't super duper blame him because he thought he missed out and he just got married and he probably was just living life and to an extent licking his wounds and enjoying life as opposed to focusing on powerlifting. And then he got the call. Now, I don't think he straight up took his foot off the gas and wasn't lifting. And he did have, he's got 4 weeks when he found out. I think his post was saying, not the craziest amount of time. So we'll see. But if he was the foregone favorite going in, it's a little bit more confidence. But if he was the underdog at 100% due to what Anthony did at U.S. Nationals, and we think he might not be 100%, it gets a little tougher. It gets a little bit tougher. But this is sports. And where's Anthony at? We don't know. He also hasn't been posting. What's going to happen after all this travel? We don't know. And my goodness, if Keenan wins Worlds, the aha moment he could have. But the 105s are extremely talented because, as Rory said, you also have two-time best lifter at the World Championships, Anatoly, who's an absolute beast himself. I'm going to swing this around the table right now. And then you guys jump in with all your exercise comments. Do the 105s clap the 120s at IPF Worlds? I'm going to throw this to Matt Gary, who is probably going to be biased because he's got some Brits in the 120s. And but Matt,
You're talking strictly in terms of total. Is the 105 total gonna be
strictly in
higher?
terms of total,
No.
Eric?
Hmm. That's so really the question is Anthony McNaughton gonna total more than non-sale?
120s. But if Keenan's 100, if Keenan's 100%, look
Yeah.
at Keenan was
Not
saying
that it's that
when
locked up in the 120s.
Keenan,
I don't
go
think so
ahead.
because it is Worlds, and I think
No.
I don't think Keenan can out total the 120s, but I think Keenan will be close enough to Anthony McNaughton that he needs to play smart and go for the title win.
That's what the question really is, isn't it? If you
Yes.
think
Yes.
if Keenan's 100%, I think Keenan could rival up some crazy numbers as well. The question is, where do you think Keenan is? And neither of these gentlemen are posting a lot to Rory's point, so it's kind of difficult. Rory, how about you? Do the 105s clap the 120s?
I wouldn't phrase it quite like that, but you know what? I'm going to say, yeah, I think Anthony McNaughton is going to out total the best 120.
Because yeah, it all depends on how it shakes up. Look at Sheffield's not for sure, and sometimes you drop the hammer on the day of. And if Keenan is strong and surprises people, he pushes Anthony. They might both be neck and neck, and maybe at the end, Keenan doesn't out total the 120s, but he pushed Anthony to a point where he did have to load something. Who knows? Who the frick knows how this ends up? But it's definitely a possibility. It's definitely a conversation piece that we have to have, isn't it? And also, we'd be remiss not to mention you got former world champ Emil Norling in the mix. You got Coco from France who hit a 920 is starting to live up to that potential. He had a few years there. We all knew he had tons of potential and just didn't have the days he wanted. Hit a 920, seems to be hitting his stride. Very interested in seeing what both Emil and Coco hit. Anything else you think we should hit for the 105s before we move to the 120s?
Yeah, I just want to
Yeah.
mention Danish lifter as well, Regan Stogakis,
Mm-hmm.
still a junior. Best total, to be fair, at 120, he did it at about 110 kilos, but he did total 925.5 not that long ago. And he is progressing at an insane rate. He's already put at least 10 kilos on his squat since that total. And he's not sitting, he's cutting 4 or 5 kilos, which is a lot, but it's not the same as the 59s that we were talking about earlier, cutting 4 or 5 kilos. I don't think he's a podium contention this year, but I think he's someone we should keep an eye on for like future podium potential.
Thank you. First off, as I scroll down, I can't believe I almost omitted him. He's been on the podcast a couple times. Junior world champ, junior world best lifter. Absolutely a star to keep an eye on the future, and all of his lifts are moving real quick. Joey Flex disciple, but I agree it might be a stitch too early, but he might claim some big scalps. He might bypass some rather big names on this, and he might insert himself into the conversation. I don't know. It depends on where Anatoly is. If you believe he might even elbow his way onto the podium, that's tough. If Anatoly is around 945, he'd have to throw another 20 kilos onto his total, but Regan's freaking young and he is fast rising. Matt, can Regan possibly elbow his way onto the podium?
I don't think so. Not quite yet. I think the podium is in all likelihood, as Rory discussed, is going to be these three. I don't want to call them usual suspects because Anthony's new and Keenan's new to the world stage, and of course Anatoly. But I think that's going to be the podium. I think the big question for me is Keenan's health of his hamstring adductor. I was able to help he and Joe Stanek at Powerlifting American Nationals. Of course, he lifted in the morning session. Wasn't able to have the head-to-head with Anthony, so we were just trying to put up the best total possible, and he tweaked his adductor / hamstring on that third and final deadlift. So haven't spoken to him, but I hope that that's healed and that it's no longer bothering him. And it's one of those situations where, inserting Keenan is going to force Anthony to be on his P's and Q's. Anthony cannot miss because Keenan's right there, and they can't slack because Anatoli's not far behind. So it's going to be interesting. But to answer your original question again, I don't think that Reagan will be in striking distance for the podium. And just if I can add just one final thing about Sanchez Dillon, of course, we're happy that the flight got extended to 9 because we were originally outside of prime time. So now we're going to be in that A group session. Really excited about that. Again, I think everybody saw Sanchez's 405. Of course, that came at a deadlift only competition. That was a team event at Super Training Gym in Great Britain. It was not a powerlifting event. But I will say this, having seen his deadlift training and some of what's going on behind the scenes, and I'm doing a strategy call with Sanchez tomorrow to install his game plan, and I don't want to speak for him, but I can accurately say, or with probably a lot of authority, that if we end on a 405 deadlift, that's a disappointing day. So he's got the world record at 400, and I think we're going to be in a situation if we're 8 for 8. And that's going to be, of course, our game plan, and he makes a very high percentage of his third deadlifts. And don't forget, I just remind you, at the British Championships, which were back in just last year in November, he pulled 408 and a half on his third pull. And I was sitting right there in the front row, and it got turned down on judge's call. And I thought it was a good lift, but it got turned down. So he stood up with 408 and a half and probably had a couple kilos left. And that was at a full powerlifting meet. So if he can be 8 for 8, I think Sanchez is just in one of those positions of where we decide the number that we want to pull and what position do we want to pull into. I'm not saying that we'll be within striking distance of the podium. I'm just saying he can, kind of finagle his way. Do I want to come 4th, 5th, 6th? Where do I want to place? And if some of those other lifters start missing, we have that luxury, obviously, of pulling last and not only being, pulling the world record, but kind of naming where he kind of wants to end, or at least having that opportunity.
Well, let me throw this out there. I know you need to keep an eye on team points, so where he ends up placing for sure.
Right,
However,
right.
411 is the biggest deadlift in IPF. And my man is ever so close.
Yeah,
on an individual, if I'm off podium and you're like, do you want to be 5th or 6th? I'm telling you, I want to be the best deadlifter in the flipping world, pound for pound. You're loading up 411.5. That's what I'm telling you, sir. That's the negotiation you and your athlete got to talk about. But do I want to be 6th or 7th? Or do I want to be the greatest of all time? Right. My friend, it's especially if Haro loads up, misses. Thank you. I'm taking your title now. Now I'm pound for pound the greatest deadlifter. Now I'm the deadlift demon. You lost it. Congratulations. I don't know. That's me. Eric, did you want to throw something else out there?
Yeah, I think there's actually a lot of sleepers and a lot of unknowns in this because, as to Rory's point, there's not a lot of posting. But a big shout out to Canada's Walter Carriazo. This is a guy who was pulling for podium spot and just missed it. A very, very consistent lifter with a high hit rate. Typically is going 6 for 6 on subtotal, and then typically only misses his last deadlift because he's trying to pull for contention. And importantly, the Canadian coaching staff at the world level is very good. So I do think Walter is good for something between 380 to 390, and he will be in a really good position, probably at 7 or 8 out of 9 at the point when he makes that pull. So he is also someone with not quite as big of a weapon as we were just discussing. He's not going to be pulling a number that starts with 4. So, he's not going to be one taking over the title from, Sanchez Dillon or Anaharo as deadlift demon. But I did want to give a shout out to Walter. He has been lifting since his mid-20s. He's in his mid-30s. He's still improving, and very much kind of a working in the dark, but a threat to be probably top 5, and looking for some of these people to potentially slip up. And I am really curious. I feel like Emil Norling is not done. I feel like there is a potential, resurgence that we're going to see, and it's just a matter of time in him as a lifter. And if that's the case, we could be seeing him getting back into that 920 to 930 range, which is notable. Although this year, I think the podium's probably locked up, and it's going to be interesting because there are a few people who could potentially do something with the squat world record. There's definitely going to be a bench press world record at play, and not within the top 3, we're probably going to see that, the bench press world record, and not in the top three. We might see the deadlift world record fall. So I think we're going to see a lot of records fall, and some of them may need to fall to give people the best shot. So it's going to be a really cool class, and I think it probably has the most unknowns. I think the 105s, there's going to be the most potential surprises. Anthony McNaughton, I felt, had more in him after PA Nationals, and I think Keenan maybe did not, and also came away with an injury. So it'd be interesting to see just how much he can coast to a victory, or maybe the travel gets him. So anyway, like I said, lots of unknowns. It's going to be exciting to watch.
This will be the one and potentially, the one and only weight class where all 4 world records are going to get broken. I think we could see it at 93, like we discussed, maybe, but that's huge, maybe because of the squat with Gustav. But this is a weight class where all 4 world records are going to get broken.
Only time will tell. Matt, do you have the 120s, I believe?
Yes, sir.
Britt is leading the charge as the #1 nomination. What a surprise you got the 120s, huh? What a surprise. Take it away, sir.
Yeah, that's why I signed up for this weight class. This is going to be really interesting because, again, it's a weight class where we do not have the returning world champion in the mix, which is Bob Matthews, who, again, competed as a extraordinarily light 120 last year. So we've got some newcomers. I mean, we've got 2 new Brits in Mo Suleiman, of course, and we've got Nanzo Chinye. And I, people refer to him as a kid, but he's not a kid. He's a full-grown man, and he's nominated first at the age of 20. Of course, we have returning Etienne El Sher, I think is how I pronounce it, from Lebanon, and Devin Williams. And I will say this, just about the nominated totals. I'll talk about this one for just a second. The gentleman from Algeria, it's Mohamed Sahad. So he is nominated. Let's see, I'm just looking at right here. He is nominated on a 940 kilo total. It's a total that I actually disputed. When you look up, his best total is actually 915. So that's just letting you know, it's something I'm going to mention at the technical meeting. 940 has not been verified. I actually emailed the powers that be. They got back to me, but they did not talk about that total. So I'm really not going to discuss him. But look, I think the major 4 players here are the 2 Brits, Etienne and Devin. And I think each of them kind of get to their total, like we've talked about many times, and they take a different path to their total. So I think the real wild card here is Mo, because if we just look at totals, Mo appears to be on the outside there at 930, kind of looking in. However, his best total ever is 937.5, which he hit at the Arnold UK last year. Mo has historically had an issue on game day with cramping. And, I think that we saw that a lot at 105, and I don't know if it was because of the weight cuts. Eric would be more equipped to discuss that than myself, but he has a history of cramping quite a bit. I will say this, Mo is as heavy as he's ever been. He just checked in the other day through our athlete monitoring system. He's weighing about 115. And that's good because that bodes well for him. So that's why we're seeing him healthy. He's ascending in all disciplines. The added body weight has served him well, and in the subtotal portion of his lifts, doesn't look to me like it's taken too much off of his deadlift. His leverages still appear to be holding up, and I would anticipate a big pull from him. And something that's really exciting is that at the British Championships back in November, Mo totaled 930 and came in second to Tony Cliff. He beat Nanzo in body weight, but the thing was, Mo, it took him 3 attempts to make a bench press, and the reason is because he had an issue with his elbows. Well, he's got that sorted, and I've seen his elbows, and his elbows look locked, and everything looks above board and just absolutely outstanding. So he is ascending into the meet. He's strong, like I said, as heavy as he's ever been, weighing about 115. And he, I think, again, as I said, is kind of the true wild card here, because you're kind of looking at those top 3 on the nominations. You're looking, of course, at Nanzo, Etienne, and Devin, and you're assuming, okay, and again, this Mohammed Saad from Algeria, that total of 940 has not been confirmed. So I'm not really including him in the conversation, and I haven't been able to find anything in terms of Instagram and data on him outside of what's on Open Powerlifting. But we're looking at the top three there, and we're saying, well, Mo's, kind of a long way out there. But again, attempts at these weight classes, you swing and miss on an attempt, you're talking a significant chunk towards your total. And so I think Mo's going to be in a situation where he comes in top form, where he's really, in striking distance of these other guys and is a legitimate contender to be in the mix, particularly because he's got a really big deadlift. But, oh, by the way, these other guys have big deadlifts too. So I think one of the questions about Devin Williams, just talking about the American for the second here, is we saw his performance at Powerlifting and American Nationals, and it was well documented that he was dealing with a knee injury at the time. And so he really, as Ryan had said on the podcast, just kind of did what he needed to do to secure the W, right? And that was with a clearly diminished squat. I think Big Dev's PB squat is 340 kilos. What he squatted at Powerlifting American Nationals was 317 and a half. So clearly well under that. So he did hit a 937 and a half gym total today, as a matter of fact, where he squatted 310, and that looked pretty solid. So, I don't know if he's got more heavy training, but I'm sure he's hopeful that his squat can be somewhere between where it was at Powerlifting American Nationals and somewhere closer to his PB. I think everybody in the world anticipates that he is going to increase his bench press world record. The 260, the world record is 261. He just recently did 263, I believe it was, at Powerlifting American Nationals. Again, that looked pretty comfortable. I know he's been talking about a 600-pound bench, 272 and a half. The question becomes, do you take that risk? Do you load up that much? Maybe if your squat is diminished and you don't come in top form in the squat, maybe you're thinking, hey, I've got to manufacture some additional kilos. I've got to score some extra kilos here. And maybe you take that chance and go for a 600-pound bench. I don't know. That'll be interesting. And then he did hit a 372 and a half kilo deadlift that was done today in his SBD day. So that's 2.5 kilos over his PB deadlift. So that's exciting to see from Dev. And I know that he said that he plans on going 9 for 9 and forcing Nonzo into a position, where he's got to pull a big deadlift. And so if we're looking at the other two guys here, we've got Nonzo, I'll speak on him last. And then, of course, Etienne of Lebanon. I mean, we're only separated by a few kilos. And I think if you remember last year in Lithuania, Etienne essentially had to pull a gigantic deadlift, and he had to do it twice. He pulled 396 on his second attempt, and it was turned down. And then he came back and actually got it on his third attempt, which was just absolutely amazing. He put up a 953 kilo gym total, but that was back on April 6th. I haven't seen anything much since then, unless he's put it in his stories. But look, I'm sure that he's thinking, hey, Nonzo's not the only 400 kilo deadlifter out there, and he's probably thinking I can take a shot at this world record as well in the deadlift and wanting to load up. And so then if we come to Nonzo, he's fresh off of Euros, hitting a 965 total. I had the good fortune of coaching him at that meet where he hit a personal best in every single discipline with a little bit of room to spare in the squat, perhaps just a touch in the bench. And I think we can all agree that there was plenty of meat left on the bone in that 400 kilo deadlift. Nonzo does not hide any of his training. He puts everything out there for everybody to see in full view. So I know that a lot of people like that. He hit a 967.5 kilo gym total on May 21st to the tune of a 350 kilo squat, which again, that's more than he hit leading into Euros. He had a 212 and a half kilo bench, which tied his PB on the bench press in competition. Again, already done that in training. And oh, by the way, pulled a 405 kilo deadlift. So I think we're in a situation here where we're kind of looking at, Big Dev wanting to come out and use that bench weapon, if you will, to establish a big subtotal. And by making 9 lifts, he obviously wants to force the opposition, to force Etienne, to force Nonzo into a position where they're going to have to put a really huge world record deadlift on the bar. I just think it's a question of, is Devin Williams, has his squat returned, and to the tune of how much? Because there's a big gap between seeing 310 in the gym, 317 at his most recent meet, and a 340 kilo squat. So if Dev's squat is back to 335, 340-ish range, then we're talking about him putting up a really big total. If he's not, in that neighborhood, he could be in some trouble in terms of scoring a big total. And then again, as I said, we've got kind of Mo as that wild card where if he can go 8 for 8 and come in hydrated and not cramping and not succumb to those sorts of things and make 8 lifts, he can also be in the mix. And then of course we've got Canadian Bryce Krachek, who also, by the way, has a gigantic deadlift. He posted up an 865 kilo gym total just a few days ago to the tune of a 320, a 195, and a 352.5. So I know he's kind of in striking distance of 390 plus in the deadlift. So this is going to be a really cool weight class where one way or the other, we are going to crown a new world champion. One of the questions also looming out there is, are we going to see Dennis Cornelius's record, which I believe is the oldest standing record next to Fedosienko's, if I'm not mistaken, right, of 978.5, which was done in Killeen, Texas in 2016. Are we going to see that beaten? And I'm sure that's one of the questions that Ryan is going to ask. It looks like he's slipped off the call momentarily. But I do think that we're going to see that world record total get broken. I think the squat is safe. Dennis Cornelius's 386 kilo squat is safe for now. We can put a pin in that, but I think that will get broken eventually. I do think Dev is primed and ready again to break his own world record in the bench press. I would be shocked if he doesn't add on to the 261 kilo bench. And of course, the world record deadlift is clearly in play between Etienne and Nanzo. I mean, both of them, presumably, we've already seen Nanzo go over 400 in training. As I said, he doesn't hide anything. He pulls 405. And I've got my strategy call with Nanzo tomorrow. Shout out to his coach, James Adcock. These two guys are mature beyond their years. And I know that we're going to formulate a plan that puts us in a position where we can, potentially put something on the bar for the win there. And again, I will be coaching Nanzo. Alex Pearson-Jones will be coaching Mo. And so that's going to be the division of labor on the British side. And so I think we're really, going to be in for an exciting championships where, like I said, we're going to crown a new world champion in 120.
A couple quick questions I want to throw around the board right now. Does Nanzo take the IPF deadlift world record? Again, we think Sanchez might take a swing at this at the 105s, but Nanzo will have an attempt himself, and he's right there. And in this case, he might need to. It might not be a frivolous. This might be a chip that he needs. So this isn't just for fun. Matt Gary?
I'll say this. I still have to do strategy calls with both of those gentlemen, but I'll give you as much inside information as I can. My call with Sanchez is tomorrow. Clearly, I told you before, I think if he pulls less than 405, that's going to be a disappointing day for him. I'm sure that on his bingo card, he wants to pull, the biggest deadlift in IPF history. And whether or not we give that to him, and let him do that, it remains to be seen on the day. Let me just say this about Nanzo. We are going to take the absolute lowest amount that we would need potentially to secure victory. That's obvious, right? We are not going to chase whatever Sanchez does the day before, right? Or 2 days prior. That's not what we're there to do. As Rory said, and I have said many times, there's one day out of the year when you can become an IPF world champion. And at the tender age of 20, that would be an absolutely remarkable thing to do. And so, do I think he's capable? Absolutely, yes. Because I asked him at Euros when he came off the platform, we were kind of joking once the dust settled. I said, honestly, what do you think you had on the day? And he goes, I think I had about 412 and a half. And I said, I agree. Based on how that 400 moved, I think you had that much. So we're going to, obviously, if we are in that position to pull for the win, we're going to put exactly what we need on the bar. And but we're not going to chase Sanchez the day before,
I think you'll need to.
Do I think we'll need to chase? Well, I don't know what Sanchez is going to load up, but I think we're in a position where if these other guys make their lifts, right, they want to put Etienne and Nonzo in that position where they have to load up. I mean, obviously that's the strategy, right? So Nonzo's prepared to pull into the 400s, with no problem. And I think we've seen that, and he's put that out there. So
Eric, do you foresee a situation where Nonzo does have to load that up, and that's what it's going to take to win?
Not quite. I think I think the number to beat is probably not going to be higher than like a 970 total, and the math just doesn't put that at a deadlift all-time world record. It'll be very close, annoyingly close probably for Nonzo in retrospect, but I think he can mop his tears up with the his gold medal, the ribbon attached to it, and not feel too bad about it.
Or you're nodding your head in agreement.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think Sanchez has this like quite nice position where he's probably not going to be in real podium contention, which means he can do what he wants. He can load what he thinks he's actually good for. Nonso needs to win. And, if he takes a massive swing and misses, he's probably not going to win. So, like, unless he's already sewn it up after the second attempts, which can happen, right? Like, you're ahead on seconds. Everyone comes in, they load up what they think they need for deadlifts. They all miss. And then Nonso goes, oh, look, I've already won. Let's throw 410 on the bar. Let's throw 412 on the bar, whatever. Maybe. But I think it's unlikely. I think way more likely is that he's going to load exactly what he needs to win. And Sanchez is just in a position where he can play games with the deadlift, and Nonso is not.
Yeah, essentially comes down to, do you think he needs to load that to win? And because I agree, unless he has it sewed up by the second, and I think it's too close to do that. So you would have to do the math and think, I think he needs it to win. And I don't know if we're there yet either, to Eric's point, when you're looking at it. I don't know if Big Dev is at 100% or not. Big Dev at 100% could be a massive threat, but that gym total you're indicating is below his platform total. Doesn't mean he couldn't have a platform total PR and make a major push. I'm not sure. ETN looks extremely confident when he's on the podcast, but Eric said everyone's confident on podcasts, so it's difficult to say, and they're not necessarily posting to let you know. So yeah, this go ahead, Eric. Go ahead.
I want to bring up a dark horse. So
Ooh.
Joseph McDonald
Yeah.
of Trinidad. Okay. Two competitions on record, no Instagram, and those competitions are the only ones on record for him. They're a year apart. Cayman Islands and APF 2023. This young 19-year-old totals 801. 2024 and APF 1 year later totals 926.5.
Mm.
That is a 125 kilo increase in one's total, moving from the age of 19 to 20. We have seen repeatedly what people who are this young can do. I'm not saying his total is going to be up, like the equivalent of 80 kilos or 90, but if it goes up 40 kilos, which is not unreasonable, a third of what he did, and then he is right there in the mix. Because if you look at kind of like what are we projecting here? Like Matt said, Natso doesn't hide his training, so we can expect probably like an incremental improvement on where he's at. Maybe as high as a 980 is his maybe top end. I'm just guessing. I have no idea. But probably won't need it based upon what we've seen. Etienne, who is on the rise, like he posted a squat video of him making 345 look far easier than it did a year ago. So probably an incremental improvement there. And then if Big Dev's knee is healed up and he has a great day on bench and deadlift, we're kind of probably looking at a 970 top end there. So if our range of what is like podium is 960 to 980, and Joseph McDonald makes anything close to the kind of improvement he made from 2023 to 2024, from 2024 to 2025, he might be up in the mix and surprise a lot of people. So I think him and Mo, their their nominated totals are potentially underrepresentative of what might actually happen on the day, and I think we should keep an eye on both of them.
I wholeheartedly agree. Excellent point, Eric. And if you just, again, to your point, if you look at Joseph McDonald's open powerlifting, the last meet that he did, the lone lift that he missed was his third squat, and it was a 20-kilo jump. So if he'd made that, we're looking at 946 and a half. And okay, maybe he didn't have 20 kilos, clearly. What if he'd taken 335 and it's 50? So we're, there's a lot more there. That 926 is probably more realistically already at, 940 if he makes that third squat. So, yeah.
Sneaky contender. I like it. Every now and then you see that pop up and people like, where the heck did that guy come from? You know what? Rondell Hunt actually had mentioned him. It said he's someone to look out for and he could surprise some people. Good call, Eric. Also, shout out to Bryce Krawcheck, former world record breaker, who is returning to the IPF World Championships once again. Longtime grizzled veteran of the game, and he's back. So we'll see him back in action as we move into the 120s, the final weight class, and home of the apex predator, Jesus Oliveras. And Jesus looks like he's had a phenomenal training, hit 460 kilos in squat. This happened he posted it anyways, May 26th. Bench press 260, also May 26th, or the week of the May 26th, sorry, and has hit as high as 425 with deadlifts. In May 29th, we've seen a 410. Now, the big thing with Jesus is his final third deadlift. 33% is the hit rate on his third and final deadlift. And much debate has been, nobody debates his depth. In terms of big men, historically speaking, you hear, it's difficult to call. It's difficult for them to get deep, yada, yada. Never been the case with Jesus. But there's been talk in terms of his deadlift. If you look at the comments section and then in the DMs, whenever I post him, I get people who are the hardcore powerlifting people, and it all comes down to that third deadlift. I'm not sure what it is. If it's habitual, and then I have other people who coming in here and have conversations of, no, it's not habitual with he locks his knees and then slightly unlocks. Locks them. Pure, true lock. And then slightly opens them. Is it open enough to warrant a red light? Or is it still enough to pass for a deadlift? And it varies. It varies on how much, depending on the weight. Now, 425 is absolutely freaking monstrous. 410, still monstrous, obviously. And the amount of the unlock definitely varies. I'm not sure. I've had people jump in my DMs and say, I think this comes down to a grip issue. And to hide the grip issue, you just unlock a little stitch and it becomes ever so easier to have it in your hands. Other people say maybe it's just something he's been doing and it's difficult to undo. It's like a motor pattern. And it's not that. I don't know. You literally, it's king of lifts. So you can imagine I have the quote unquote, I say it's affectionately, powerlifting nerds who, and they jump into the DMs and they start giving me, we have our good old fashioned sports debates. However you like it, I think his final deadlift is going to be monstrous, and he doesn't need 425 to have a monstrous total. And I think, and by the metrics, he is the strongest powerlifter alive. He's the strongest powerlifter that ever lived. And I think we might see the biggest total we've ever seen out of him. We haven't seen the top end where it's necessarily his benches, but his bench looks on point. His squat looks on point, and his deadlift does look on point. So I think he has the potential to drop the biggest total we've ever seen. And if the question is, why would he do it at IPF Worlds? Why not save it for Sheffield? I don't think he's thinking that way anymore. I think maybe previously, but I think now he knows if I have the ability to do so, I'm going to drop it on that day because it's been a stitch inconsistent. And I think he's feeling consistent right now. I think a lot of people, when I look at the comments, I think a lot of people are on the same page in terms of the consistency that his training has been looking. I think Jesus Oliveras, obviously a very heavy favorite to win it. And I think he's looking like he's pacing for an all-time best performance at IPF Worlds. Now let's have a quick chat. I'll throw this out to you for you fellas too, for your comments on this. Timur, body weight still floating quite a bit lower than we're used to. I seen him squat 350. Haven't seen much bench from him, and I seen him pull 390. I'm not sure what to expect. His body weight is what, 130 kilo range, in the 130s. I have no idea what to expect from Timur. I really don't. We thought he got injured previously. We didn't get to see him at his new low body weight. 390 deadlift is still big. I mean, it's really big, obviously. I'm not sure. Talk about a freaking tough one to call from Timur. I think this is, at one point in Lithuania, he showed signs that he's going to be the guy to push Jesus. He's going to be the guy to, at the very least, keep Jesus honest. You can't just do whatever you want, show up and win by a wide spread. You start missing, I'll make you pay. But since then, my goodness, the question marks around him with the body weight drop. I think he's too heavy for 120. I don't think he's ever going to go down to 120, but he might be too light for 120 plus. He could be medaling. He could be on the podium, which is absolutely phenomenal. 2 around the world doing so. So he's obviously a viable player, but I don't know if the discussion around him from Lithuania 2024 Worlds, where he could be the next guy to threaten, I think we might be off that talking piece. Interested in seeing what you gentlemen say. And then we have AJ Sharma. Of course, Matt's going to have a little more insight into him, but I've seen a 350 squat. I didn't see a hell of a lot of, I seen a 380 squat. Oh, sorry, I was reading Timur's notes here. 380 squat posted on the 23rd. Seen him absolutely destroy 370. He posted this on the 28th, and he said this was his last warm-up. Teased us a little, didn't show what the actual top set was, but 370 looked like, he had so many more kilos in him. So just a note, his top end squat in competition was 403.5. To my estimation, the way those lifts are looking, he's probably going to have a PR in him. Seen him bench 230. He's benched 235 previously. This was in late May. I expect him to have a PR bench then on a day. And I seen him pull 360. This is around mid-April. And his PR was 362.5. The way 360 moved in mid-April, by the time June rolls around, I think we're going to have a PR deadlift as well. So I think AJ, who's coming into this with a 1,001 kilo total, this is from November of 2024, is for sure a major threat, a massive threat. Jank, obviously, from Turkey, hasn't been posting. He's totaled more. He has totaled 1018. If he brought that, I'm not sure. I'm interested in hearing what you guys think, but AJ looks like he's absolutely peaking where Jank has been in recent years, heavily injured, inconsistent with training, and shows up sometimes just for the deadlift alone because he's so badly injured. So I'm not entirely sure what to take for him, but AJ has been absolutely on fire with his training. Looks like PRs are coming his way, and he's going to take his total PR and take it for a ride. Matt, you obviously have some inside baseball. I'm not expecting you're going to reveal too much, but what are your thoughts on the 120s, 120 pluses?
Yeah, so I think let me start with at the bottom kind of and work my way up if we can. The total by the Taipei lifter, again, had an issue with that one. Checked on it. The best I've seen from him is actually 942.5, not the 982.5 that's listed. So again, another one that I will challenge at the technical meeting. Got Paul Kirkbride-Richards, who's on a national team headed to Worlds for the very first time, competed at the European Championships, represented himself well. I think Paul, we're trying to look to sneak into the top 5. That would kind of be a goal for him. Trains at a commercial gym on whippy bars, poor equipment. So he typically ascends into these meets when he gets on this comp equipment and has an easier go of it on game day. So I do anticipate Paul to PB his total. Let's not forget about Eric Willis, really strong lifter, is going to be there. He's got a big deadlift to boot, so he could make some noise and possibly, believe it or not, maybe even challenge for the podium. Sank from Turkey competed at Euros. I saw him there. He's got a 5.6 average out of 9, just very wildly inconsistent and erratic. I actually would think that he's going to come off podium, to be quite honest with you. Timur, Lord knows. I mean, it's so hard to predict, right? He hurt himself in the warm-up room at Euros. He hurt his hamstring. We're all assuming that he's going to come in at circa 130 kilos body weight. And I think that total is going to take a tremendous hit. He hasn't been posting any bench videos, to your point. I think that 390 was rather hard, Ryan. And so I think it's a question of what type of form is he in with regards to his health of his hamstring and what's his body weight. But I think that's going to take that total. That 1087 is obviously not going to happen. Oh, go ahead, Eric.
Can I ask you a question, Matt?
Yeah, please.
So I wasn't privy to this, but do you know what Timur was nominated at for Euros before he got hurt? What he was like, what his openers were going to be?
Oh man, I'm trying to remember. He did have some pretty big openers up on the board. And I thought to myself, those have to be fake. Because I want to say
I remember the discussions.
They were really, really robust openers. And I took a look at the scoreboard and I'm thinking to myself, there is no way in hell he's taking these lifts. Because I want to say his squat opener might have been listed at about a 400 kilo squat opener. And I'm like, there's no chance he's lifting 400 kilos on an opener. Those have to be fake openers and I know the coaches from Georgia like to play a lot of games in terms of putting in fake attempts and then pulling them down and so forth. So,
and then second question.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay.
What did he get hurt doing? Was it early warm up, late warm up?
Yeah, I don't know. I just saw him limping out of the warm-up room as we were all and I initially thought it was his foot, but I asked him at the banquet and he pointed to his hamstring. So I didn't see it again. I mean, clearly that happened during the squats. And so I don't know on what warm-up it was on, but you would think that there was some appreciable load on the bar, not 70 kilos or 120, probably had something on there significant. And for whatever reason, pulled out and walked away. So, but yeah, I just can't. I would not be the least bit surprised if he's not even able to total 1,000 kilos. So I know I would be shocked, as a matter of fact, if he's able to hit much more than 1,000. And so I'm looking. Yeah, I mean, AJ is primed and ready. I mean, not much to add beyond what Ryan said. He is in top form. He was in top form at the British with 1,001 kilo total, and all of his lifts are ascending and trending beyond that prep. So he's beyond the prep that he had leading in. Of course, body weight's not an issue. He's healthy. He had pulled out of Euros because of a back injury. He's got that sorted. He's good to go. He's in top form. And so I think AJ, again, going to get on a strategy call with him tomorrow. I believe it is. He's got his sights set on, locking up silver because, of course, Jesus in the pole position there, strongest power lifter, super heavyweight to ever lift. To your point, Ryan has had a good prep. Not sure if we're going to see, I agree with what you said, Ryan. I think we could see a really big total out of Jesus. Don't know if he's in world record squat territory. I'm not sure. I think that's going to be a function of how much body weight he can maintain during the trip. I know that's an issue for some of these supers. Eric can obviously speak to that much more than I can, but it's maintaining weight. Once you get over there, oftentimes you don't have access to the same foods, the same structure in terms of meal timing, this, that, and the other. And so it's hard to maintain body weight, but his bench does look good. And I think the issue with the deadlift, Ryan, and we've discussed this before, and I'll say it again, and I know this for a fact because Joseph has been forthcoming, and I know Jesus' training and the way that it's set up, and I also coach Ray Williams. These guys do not squat and deadlift on the same day. They just don't in their training. So the pulls that you're seeing are him coming in and that being the cornerstone or primary movement of the day. And so he's pulling presumably fresh. And I've said before, I think Jesus has got the hip and back strength to pull 425 to 430, somewhere in that range. I mean, he's proven it. He pulled 425 in late May with, might have had soft knees and so forth. The question becomes, what can he produce after a heavy squat and a heavy bench? And that's the issue. And I want to be clear. I'm not suggesting that this guy switches training around and start doing SPDs every day like Agaton. That's not what I'm suggesting. But Well, what I'm saying is that's why we get this kind of distorted view of what we're anticipating from his deadlift, because it just becomes an issue after carrying that much weight on your back during heavy squat. Also, the way that his hands are, the meaty hands, the chubbier fingers, they have a tendency to swell after supporting that kind of load in your hands and, and on your back. And so then the grip becomes an issue. It's not an issue of hip and back strength. He's got all the strength in the world. We know that he can stand up with the weight. That's never the issue. It's just, can he do it to standard? And can his grip, be fortified enough and withstand those previous 8 attempts that he can hang on to one at the end. So, yeah, I mean, Jesus is clearly in the pole position. It's his meat to lose, and then I think we're just fighting for the podium. And I don't see Timur being able to produce anywhere near, that coming in lighter. And so that's kind of how I think it's going to shake out.
Yeah. Also, shout out to Eric Willis, 2018 world champion in the 120s and the first Canadian to win a world title in the classic.
In his own country.
In his own country, no less.
Yep.
So, quick question. I'm going to swing this one around the table like I do. Jesus Oliveras, does he break the total world record at IPF Worlds? I'll throw it to you first, Matt.
Oh, man. Does he break it? No, I don't think he does.
Eric?
I don't think so either. I think he's on track to do really, really well, but he just he set that world record so high at the inaugural Sheffield. I think we could see something over 1100, and I think he could get quite close. I think he'll have a good day, but I don't know if he'll be able to put that together.
And if I can just add one thing, one of the reasons that obviously all the stars aligned at Sheffield, also because Sheffield is engineered and manufactured for peak performance. Worlds is not. He's going to be in a short flight with 8 lifters. And I think that makes a tremendous difference. And so yeah, at Sheffield, you've got 12 lifters. He's got that extra rest. You can swing for the fences without consequence. Knowing the way that Joseph coaches, I think they'll, say, look, we just need to kind of get a good total here, land somewhere between our last performance and the world record, pad the lead, pad the total, secure the W. And that's another reason why I say no, is because he's going to be in a short flight.
Your squat, you got thousands of pounds getting tossed around.
Yeah.
You got 1,000 pounds on your back, turning around that quickly you're right. That's with a short flight for the big men. It's tough. I think his strength levels might be around there, but the day isn't set up like that. Rory, what do you think though?
I don't think so either. He is pacing pretty well, I think, but he needs to be in peak performance. He has the distinct disadvantage of having to beat the strongest man ever himself from Sheffield. And like that means PR squat, PR bench, PR deadlift, probably. Like if he wants to break that world record total, like there's no room for slipping up. There's no room for taking a slightly conservative squat if he wants to break the total world record. So, and to the earlier point, like it's an 8-person flight. Like he's going to have, and they will have the A team spotter and loaders, and like he's not even going to have 8 minutes between attempts. He's probably going to have 6 minutes between attempts.
Yeah.
And like how many times can you walk out 1,000 pounds in like a 12-minute window and then squat it? It's not that many. So yeah, I think way more realistically, he goes like 1120 to 1140, has a pretty good day. He looks pretty strong, but doesn't actually crack the world record total.
Any other notes that any of you gentlemen want to throw for the 120s as we get close to wrapping this up?
I do actually want to throw a note. I think at this point I'm essentially a professional hater. So I think I was actually the person who started the thing about Jesus's deadlift, because I was one of the referees who was giving him red lights for it initially. And I think it was in South Africa that was the first time that showed up, and I was like one of the platform referees at the time. The deadlifts that I have seen him post in the last month look much, much better than the ones that I was seeing in like 2022 and 2023. That does not mean that he's 100% guaranteed to get these things. Like every referee is going to look at it slightly differently. He may not even do exactly the same thing on the day as he does in training. But to my eye, I'm looking at those and they look significantly better than they used to. So I think he's much more likely to actually walk away with the probably something between 405 and 415 on the deadlift than he has been historically.
I agree. Like, I think there's definitely been improvement. Like in terms of, if people go at the 425, he's not going to load up. What the? Okay, I just caught that reference now, Eric. But I'll throw it to you one sec. I don't think he's going to load 425. I think that really threw me off. But the 410 range or whatever, the world's biggest deadlift, I think he might throw that up. And will he? There's no question. When he first hits the top of the deadlift, knees are totally locked, and there's no question there's movement from that to a second afterwards. I don't think the greatest Jesus lover can even say there's no difference. You clearly see a difference between when he locks it and then right afterwards, just zooming on his knees. There's no way anybody could tell me there isn't a difference between when he full on locks it and a second later. There is. Is there enough to red light him? Is the conversation. That's what I'm saying. And I am obviously a Jesus fan. I call the guy the strongest man that ever lived. And Eric is so passive aggressive right now. All right, let's. So, I call him the strongest man that ever lived, the strongest man that walks the face of the earth, and I'm entirely grateful that we have him at World, Sheffield, etc. But that is where we're going to rest at. Is it enough to pass? I think on any given day, it just depends on how heavy we go. But I don't know if he'll ever need 425. As long as his squat and his bench are on point. He only had 410 last time and he did 1152.5. I don't think we need to go that heavy. And I think at, from 410 to 415, he can do enough to make it pass and we're all good. So really, we don't got to be straight up full on perfectionists here. At least I don't think, but it's been such a talking point. Eric, what do you say, my friend?
Well, aside from me having fun with the Zoom red light emojis and trying to distract you, which sorry, I couldn't help myself. That's not me saying that all of his deadlift should be red lighted or anything like that. I agree. I think it is really challenging to be a super in ways that I think a lot of people don't understand, and it's unless you've coached them or are one, getting to competitions earlier, having to actively think about how do I train in such a way to where I can still progress and not risk injury, but still be prepared for an 8-person flight. The absolute loads don't scale the same way that relative loads do, which is why we see higher frequencies of training and higher percentages of 1RM being something that can be training strategies much more consistently utilized among the women's weight, not even women's weight classes, just middleweight and lower body weights, right? Because the absolute loads are lower. So it's something that you see from strongmen on up to supers. There's just some kind of general anecdotal limits. The only other thing I'd like to add, which I think is quite interesting, is I believe this is the first time we have a legitimate shot at a podium of all 1,000 kilos and up. There are 2 very inconsistent lifters, or I should say there's 1 wild card and 1 inconsistent lifter for that to come true. Like we've all stated, we don't know what's going on with Teamer, and Shank is someone who can swing 50 kilos depending upon his performances. So it would be pretty cool, though. I think this would be the first time, if it happens, that we would have all 3 of the podium finishers at 1,000 kilos, to my knowledge or recollection, if that was to occur, which might be pretty neat.
Oh, the trivia king is Matt Gary. You would probably know where.
Yeah, I think that's right. I would obviously have to check, but I think you're right.
Yeah. And how about overall? Our thoughts on overall? I think Perk is probably, I haven't crunched the numbers here, but in the running for best lifter. In terms of the national teams, probably I haven't crunched the numbers, but I'm going to assume the Americans. And any other overall notes that we should mention before we conclude this, gentlemen? Everyone in agreement with what I just said?
Joseph Borenstein, if he does sort of circa 900, would be in the
Right.
in about the same realm as Austin for overall. I'm backing Austin to win overall. I think he's got more on his total. I think Joseph's got less on his total, but I think they're in contention there.
I haven't crunched the numbers, and but admittedly, this is me assuming that, like we had said previously, Perk drops the hammer, and goes all in, and is not going conservative. If he doesn't, and we think Joe probably will be forced to because he's in a far closer, more competitive class, things could definitely swing into Joe's way, for sure. So there's intangibles there that make it difficult to estimate when it comes to this. But all right, listen, gentlemen, holy freaking smokes, 3 hours and it's just the men's. Like, what are we doing? I thought we were splitting up the men's and women's, so it would be a little tighter, a little easier. I literally have dinner with Kafwe, my lady friends here from Australia. I'm thinking, no, we split it up. We'll move a little quicker.
Yeah.
What the hell will we do if we're doing men's and women's together? What is this, a 7-hour marathon we're going to run together? Like, what is going on here?
I don't know. We were already getting silly hours with Eric there at about closing in on 3 hours recording. I would hate to think what we're like after another 3 hours.
Yeah. Eric, were you about to say something? Were you about to throw another emoji? You got to.
I was going to say I'll see you guys tomorrow. We'll do it. We'll do the
Another 3-hour session tomorrow. I'm gonna have fucking dinner with Kafwe. He's gonna, you know what? He's gonna want to talk about Worlds. And my lady friend's coming with me to Worlds. Like, the Worlds is gonna be on the topic. Like, nothing but Worlds all over me. It is what it is. Gentlemen, said it before, I said it again. I'll say it again. You guys are the A team. Extremely appreciative. You guys could join me on these things. I would not be able to do this without you, literally. Just freaking my confidence levels when you gentlemen are on here. Your scouting to the breakdowns is sky high. It's sky high. And I got anybody who wants to debate these calls, by all means, jump in my DMs. Feel free to jump in these guys' DMs too. I got people saying, hey, hey, tell this guy that. And I'm like, well, why don't you tell him? We're all not, none of us are on private. But anyways, thank you, gentlemen. We'll talk shortly. Tomorrow we'll record again. All these bad boys will be dropped. And everybody jump in the fantasy league.
Yes.
Jump in the fantasy league. And
so you can come in second place. Just
that's right.
saying.
That's right. That's right. Jump in this fantasy league and let's do some damage. All right, gentlemen. Thank you very much. Have a lovely evening. We'll talk soon. And everybody listening, please do subscribe, give us high ratings. Until next time, 6-pack Lapadat. 6 up, and we are out.